Welcome to Journey Through the Gate, the Paranormal Portal podcast, as we delve into the many questions and wonders brought on by this supernatural experience. What's on the other side of the gate? Let's find out together.
Here we go. Am I up? Okay, housekeeping. Look at me disappearing. I don't know what's wrong with this thing. I'm going to fix it. We'll get Donnie in here. We'll fix it. It should be okay now, the sound. Are you hearing it now, Ted? Give it a second. 5-5, Salvador. Okay. Hello, gatekeepers. Yes, last night, I could just tell you the electric went out. Look at me. I'm disappearing. Holy shit, I got to fix that. But here's the deal. I passed out. I got this like wave of nausea, then I got dizzy, and I went to, kind of reach the laptop and pull it up because I couldn't see the buttons. I was going to stop the video and alert Donnie that I was just sick and needed a few minutes and let him talk and do the next thing. And when I pulled the laptop to me to try to get the numbers, I was like pulled on the lid and I just blacked out right then. So it was just for a second. It was like I blacked out, and it was just like as soon as my head hit the top of the laptop, I was like, "What the hell just happened?" I looked around. For some reason, I was thinking the candles were stealing my oxygen. I know that sounds weird, but that was like my first thought. I started blowing out the candles. I'm trying to figure out what happened. But when I opened the laptop, the show was gone. Once that's closed, it just stops and ends broadcast. Then I got really dizzy. And when you have that, I'm just so disappeared. This is spooky. When you have that where you're gonna puke or it wasn't you, Glenn. I mean, I don't know what happened. I was just so dizzy and extremely hot. I started to leave my studio. I'm peeling off hats and clothes and stuff. I'm trying to get to my phone. I remember my phone's back in here, and that's when the whole world started to spin. I basically If you've ever drank an awful lot of tequila or whiskey and it just gets you, no, it was worse than vertigo. I mean, it's way past that. I was just sitting here and all of a sudden, bam, 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 it was hitting me. And right before that, my lights and stuff started to flick and all this other stuff started going on. I'm kind of ignoring it because we're watching a video and I don't know what's going on, but um it was pretty awful and it lasted quite a while. And let's get Donnie in here. And I'm sorry to leave you all like that, but just know that things like that are gonna happen. Hi, honey. Say something so I
Hello.
know I hear. Okay.
Hi.
So the whole thing is, let me shut that off. Maybe that'll help. Now I'm gone completely. There we go. So the other thing is Firefox. I'm going to try to fix this, but right now I can't. Firefox is trying to fix this. The whole thing was Chrome updated, so Chrome would not play. No, blood pressure's like great. I don't know. But anyway, Chrome updated, so Chrome will not play videos anymore on StreamYard. You hear the sound, but you don't see the vid. Like I told you last night, I got a hold of somebody that said, okay, go to Firefox. The vids are playing, they were dragging. So I had to shut everything off the house. I have some really kick-ass Xfinity that I pay for. We have all kind of boosters and all this other stuff. I'm 2 feet from the modem. They're saying that the broadcast, have to make that better. So close down all your windows, close everything else, shut off TV, anything that's, doing this. So we're trying to get it right for you guys. Just kind of battle it with me and understand that if the video drags just a titch, it should be good now. I know, right, Glenn? I feel like I did. I already feel like it took off a lot of time, but man, so when I tell you the other thing, you'll probably understand. So anyway, that's the deal with the videos. But I said I have to have the videos. Thank you. Everybody put the bubble on because it's big this week. Honest to God. Hey Paradox, I love you, man. Um, so hey Linda, sweetie, love you. I love you all. So anyhow, that's what's going on with the videos. That's what was going on with the little bitty drag last night. But at least you could see it. At least you could hear it. And the sound's not dragging. It's just some of the pictures. And it's really a shame because I worked hard on these damn videos. I mean, hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. I mean, ask Donnie. This has been going on for weeks. So when Mr. Dickens was sick, that's all we did is we sat in that room and him on his electric blanket. He would go around to all his different beds and the window with the birds. And, we kept it with like candles and nights and just safe and warm. And I spent 2 weeks in that bedroom with that little guy. And I am so grateful to have had that time with him as an absolute warrior. And I just got off the messaging with Rob Guttrow. So, and his new book, he wants to come on and talk about his new book, and it just happens to be, um, uh, I can't remember the title, but it's something like Loving Messages from Spirit Cats. And I'm like, well, there you go. And I said, you should have held that one for a minute because I bet you Dickens is going to talk Rob Guttrow up big time, you know, because he actually, when we went out to have his funeral, I was described because I was doing yard work and I wanted to pick a nice, beautiful spot. And I just reached in my drawer and pulled out a white T-shirt. And I put that on to go out and pick a spot. And I walked my yard and I said, no, the first spot I picked is what I want. And this is where it's going to be. And while we were digging and clearing and making it perfect, I looked down and you know what shirt I was wearing? Rob Guttrow's shirt. And when Rob sent me that shirt, he sent me his book and that shirt and some other things. And when I first had him on as a guest years ago, the minute I opened that box, Dickens jumped up and I thought he was going to go after the box, but he sat right in the middle of it because I wanted to take a picture of it for Rob, and say, hey, I got all the stuff. And there was this beautiful picture of Mr. Dickens sitting in the middle of it. And I said, well, I guess he's claimed all this. So there was a connection that Dickens knew. Of course they knew. And of course Rob knows. He's so in tune with animals and stuff. So there's another one for you. I mean, I honestly looked down and I was wearing the one T-shirt I have from Rob Guttrow. You tell me there are no coincidences. So there's a bunch of news, a bunch of information about tonight. How are you, Donnie Cho?
I'm doing pretty good.
Sorry, I left you in the middle of nothing last
It
night.
was a little bit strange last night
Yeah,
because
it just boom.
it happened during the video about the Chicago fire,
Yeah.
and then but the thing is on my end because I'm watching it through StreamYard, right? On my end, the video was playing fine. It didn't stop. It just kept playing. So I had no idea that the broadcast stopped on YouTube until I looked over and everyone's like, "Oh, it stopped," and I'm like, "What? I'm watching it right now."
Oh, wow,
Because the whole time everyone was like, "Oh, what happened?" I'm like,
what happened?
Miss O'Leary, they just screwed that lady over.
Yeah, they did really.
I
I'm
didn't
going
know
to
that
play the
whole thing
last
was
little part
BS.
because you guys didn't get to see it. But see, I had left my phone out here. Donnie was calling me, a couple other people were calling me. I could not move. I could not speak. I could utter a sound. I could not form words because I was trying to call my son and he was in his room. Well, not trying to call, but I gave it a shot. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't like I was crawling and, trying and it was, it wasn't that dramatic. It was just screw it. I'm dizzy. I'm going to puke. I can't, every time I moved, I thought I was going to hurl. It was just, I can't even explain. It was a wave, a tidal wave of shit just hit me. And I didn't know you were still watching. He didn't realize it either because he was listening and he thought I was just done because he was playing PlayStation and talking to his brother. And I was in another room, so he didn't know anything, but I couldn't move. But I mean, I couldn't talk. So I was fighting through it. I'm doing all my stuff because I'll tell you why. Now, please don't think I'm blaming Steve because I'm not. I've already talked to Steve. But Steve and I did a radio show with the wonderful and beautiful Shannon LeGros on 13 Into the Fray for her show, the 7th annual Halloween Steve and Cisco show. Okay, 2 hours of us yammering on. It's probably wonderful. Steve tells some great stories. At the very end, she coaxed him into telling his famous "Don't say it." A certain color, black and eyed. You know what I mean? Don't say it. now they're choking me to death. I'm sorry, guys. Hold on.
So yeah, I guess it's just me right now.
Shit.
Oh, you're back.
No, I'm back.
Can I
Go
just
ahead, go
say?
ahead. But he told his story, and every time he tells that damn story, Donnie, my electric shit falls off the walls. And last night I got hit, and at the exact same time I got hit, Steve got hit. He can't be here tonight because he's got a high fever and he's not feeling well. And it hit him the same time. Do I disappear every time I cough? Isn't that weird? It's just
Well,
so
I was
weird.
gonna
I gotta
say,
fix
I
this.
for one, I kind of like the effect of your background because it makes you look all ghostly. And considering this show, I think it looks kind of cool.
I just cannot, Donnie. I'm
Yeah.
telling you. For days with moving it to Firefox. Firefox is lagging. I upped it to see if like up your membership to the next level to see if it would help. Nothing. Chrome doesn't play anything. Hi Gray, love you baby. So anyhow, every time Steve tells that story, and I kept warning him, and everybody laughs and everybody thinks it's funny. No, 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 no. When you talk about things that don't want to be talked about, they will get you, and they will sometimes do little. Okay, if that doesn't work, try this. Now I'm not blaming it, but it's just a very again a coincidence. See, I'm talking about him, I'm choking again. But it hit Steve at the same time. So we send our love out to Steve. May he heal. He's actually fine, but we didn't want to drag him out. Wanted him to get rest. He's going to pop in all through the week because tonight, Donnie, after we finish Chicago, to stay on track, I have to do it. We're going to start Cabin 22, the first part.
Yeah.
So we're going to kind of power through this. I've got my caramel popcorn on the shelf in the kitchen, and hoping that we get through that. Shit hits the fan, Jamie. I'm telling you. So we did everything. I reached out to the bean. I got the spiritual warfare prayer. I got the. I was drinking nothing. I had nothing. It wasn't like I was drinking alcohol and it hit me. It wasn't like I was doing drugs and it kicked in. It wasn't. I'm sitting rose mint tea. Rose mint tea with sugar in the raw. So explain that to me. I mean, this stuff is real. And I mean, I literally the last bit to my room, I literally was crawling on the walls to get in there because everything was just whoopy whoopy whoopy. So today, all the mirror prayers, salt went out, the sage went out, the Florida water, all the good juju, all the love bubbles, all of the white light.
Can I just
That's
say,
go ahead.
If you don't mind, Cisco, I would like to give a little behind the scenes.
Go do it.
Before y'all blame Cisco for these tech issues, what happened was that there was an update with Chrome, and all of a sudden, because of this change to Chrome, like StreamYard is acting all haywire. Cisco gets on, the computer with like an actual employee of StreamYard, and what she says is basically download Firefox. So, and now, you can force it to download Firefox, and Firefox has its own set of issues. So that's where we're at, folks.
I blame
Google.
Just trying to dig this out and get these, because if there's something like words, like if I used a fancy thing to bring in a title or something like that, it kind of drags a little. So anyway, we've got it streaming as hard as we can. I've got, major stuff with that. I just really believe that it's this Firefox thing. As soon as Chrome opens up again and allows videos to be played, but in order to keep in track, this is what we're going to do. We can laugh our way through it. Hope to God I don't hit the floor. If I do, the new emergency setup is.
Uh-oh. Do you guys see me okay? Hello? Am I here? Do you guys see me? Oh, can you hear me? Okay. Yeah, I don't know what just happened. But the broadcast is still going, so that's pretty cool. So I guess I will talk about. I feel so weird when it's just me by myself. I always feel like I know exactly what to say and when to say when I have another person or in a chat, but then suddenly it's just me alone on the screen. I'm like, what? So yeah, well, let me just say hi to some folks. Ted Branston, always good to see you. Aunt Edna, there she is. Hi there, Lindsay. Paradox Fossils, I did not get a chance to say hello. Hello to you, Kevin Clow and Jamie. It's always nice to see you. Glenda Anderson, AJK. I didn't even see you come in. Okay. So is there anything you guys would like to listen to me talk about? Are there any topics or suggestions people have? Yeah, right. I couldn't sing K-pop. Those guys all sing like really high, and I have a very low, deep bass. Like those dudes are all like falsetto half the time. My voice doesn't do that. I wish it did, because then I would be in karaoke a lot more often, but it's just physically is not able to do falsetto. I start like, it sounds like I'm like choking or something. Man, Paradox, I'm gonna say, like, during when this show started, I noticed my dog was like acting kind of weird. Like he was just kind of staring at this one spot. I'm like, dude, what are you looking at? You guys see ghosts? Really? There's a ghost behind me. But yeah, it was weird. Yeah, and there's been some weird stuff happening with me as well here, and I'm like, what the heck's going on? One of the things I've noticed is that like when certain things happen, like when there's, I don't know, bad juju or karma or something, it seems to affect like all at once, right? Just a lot of my friends, including Cisco and Steve and myself and some of my other friends in my personal life, I've noticed like this, it's like all this weird stuff happens all at once. I don't know if anyone else has noticed that. I brought it up to Cisco one time. I was like, have you noticed a lot of weird things that seem to be happening to a bunch of people all at the same time? And she's like, oh yeah. Yeah, so there is something weird going on. I'm not going to pretend that I don't notice that. Yeah, the world does get pretty dark. And someone's advertising private photos. Okay. That's very convincing. Thank you. So I figured if I'm going to be up here for a while, so I don't know, what did you guys think about yesterday's show up until all that? Was there anything in particular, any of the stories you found interesting? Was there, I don't know, any thoughts you guys had about Chicago or the story of that Fort Dearborn massacre? Yeah, that story was kind of messed up. I don't know. And when I saw that, I was like, yep, Chicago's cursed. I ain't going there. Nope. You know, it's crazy. The crazy thing is I actually have some cousins and an aunt and uncle who live there too. And yeah, they come visit us. We don't visit them. Health is not good. Oh, Lindsay, I'm sorry to hear that. Hey, Sandy. How's it going? Thank you, Salvador. Yeah, I thought it was interesting. You know, it pretty much convinced it. I mean, it pretty much convinced me right there. I'm like, okay, Chicago is cursed. Oh, Cisco's back. We got to go out and come back in. Okay. So I guess we're going to start a new YouTube thing. Oh, her screen froze. Yikes. Yeah. Jamie's got cousins and family in Chicago as well. Yeah, I know one of my cousins there is a flight attendant for Korean Airlines. And then my other cousin there is like some investment banker dude, like finance guy. 9 Lives of Sandy's here. Yeah, so I don't know. I think this broadcast is going to end and then we're going to restart. Let me just message Cisco, see what she wants to do. So you all talk amongst yourselves, play nice. People were, right before I noticed people were getting kind of serious in the chats, talking about stuff. I was like, "Ooh, we're getting serious." So, okay. Just messaging Cisco. Okay. Yeah, it looks like she's going to have to reset it. The good food in Chicago. Is Chicago, is that deep dish pizza really as good as they say? I'm not fully convinced. Because I heard mixed reviews. Because I know a couple people who are at not McDonald's, Chicago, and they had the deep dish, and some of them told me like, it's kind of overrated. But I'm like, yeah. Oh, am I back? Oh, there you are.
I cannot even.
Yeah.
All right, keep talking. I'm sorry, guys. This is let's just get on with the show. What do you think? Keep
Yeah.
talking, Donnie. You're doing a great job.
No,
Everything
well,
I could explain what just happened. Everything
yeah.
went blank. The camera stopped. No more talking about anything Steve has seen. No more. No more. No more. No more mention. Let me get up. I'm going to shut off some lights, and we're going to kick this mule. I got to download the videos as we do them. We're going to do this, Donnie. We're going to do this.
Yeah.
We're going to have to. It's like riding on two spares, and they're both bald, and the windshield wipers don't work. But by God, we're going to finish this ride. We're going to get there. Y'all in? Are y'all in? Oh, geez. Where were we at? We were in the Chicago fire at the very end.
Then we started, yeah. And we're on the Chicago fire. They started getting into Miss O'Leary about how the story was manufactured by the reporter, which I had no clue about. They totally just screwed that lady over.
Oh, totally.
Bad.
Oh, totally.
Bad.
Yes. If it takes all night, Salvador, I love you, baby. Hang in there, Linda. Hang in there, everybody. Hey, Lindsay, it's been wonderful to see you, sweetie. And thanks for all your kindness. If you missed last night, thank you for the hanging with me 2 weeks, the sending love and everything else. And, if you got to go through something horrible like that, it's with friends. And thank you for being there, darling. Everybody that was there, Donnie, everybody. So let me see if I can download this. We're going to go with Chicago. This is not a perfect podcast. I think that's what makes it a great show. I don't even know what my background is right now. It's going to start. Don't let it scare you. So I can stop it. Okay. Donnie, are you still here?
Can you hear me?
There you
Yep,
are.
I'm
There
here.
you are. Okay.
Yeah.
When I download them, they're going to start automatically. So don't let the sound scare you. We're going to see if we can get through this way. Thank you, darling. I love you too, Lindsay. And we were right around. I remember Susan Woodcarver telling me something about, because again, I was getting dizzy and stuff started spinning right around this time when we were watching this. Oh, Sandy's moving. Hi, Sandy. Oh, she's finally moving. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I remember saying something about the blueprints because the guy had hang on one second, let me holler at somebody. Hold on.
So yeah, before Cisco comes back, New Jersey pizza's better. I don't care what anyone says. New Jersey's got the best pizza in the world. I just had to say it.
Hey, really? I don't know. I can't speak for the whole world,
No, I've
but
been
I
around the
like.
world. I've been around the world.
He
New Jersey's
has.
is
See,
the
I
best.
haven't. I
Yeah.
can't tell you. I mean, and sometimes I just get to like pizza's pizza or things are, food is food. I have a few foods that I like, but anyway, don't get me started talking about like steaks and
Yeah, we were
grilled baked
talking about
potatoes and
Chicago
cold
pizza
beer.
when you were, yeah,
Oh, were you? Okay,
yeah,
see?
while you
Okay,
were
good.
away.
Staying on the theme and all.
Yeah,
See?
yeah,
We have such a great group. Y'all just keep going amongst yourselves, even when I'm in here like pulling my hair out. You know how many buttons I clicked while I was gone? I shit you not. If we get through this night, I swear. All right, so Susan was saying something about the guy burying the blueprints. uh, Things people do weird stuff in chaos, right? But he put clay over top of them, and he found out the clay did not burn. So that's why he built the new place with clay, hoping that it would become more fireproof. Am I still disappearing as well?
not as much.
All right, I'm
No,
going to
it's
see
more
if
like
I
your
can find
outlines
it.
are kind of going in, but in terms of like full on disappearing, no.
All right, it's a little better. I'm in the woods, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it's okay. I'm amongst friends. Yeah. Oh, right. Reset your wrench. Oh, geez. Okay. Don't make me start messing with wrenches. I'll double check over here on my phone. If you lost a wrench, I never take them away. YouTube does it. And sometimes it puts you in the bad sandbox too. I have to go in there and get you out. I feel like, isn't there a Bible story about somebody going into hell and getting good people out. Anyway, I digress. Let's see if we can find out where we were. Miss O'Leary got totally.
She got hosed.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right.
And people would leave garbage there.
Okay,
And
wait a second. Back a little.
On every anniversary of the fire, they faked interviews with her.
She doesn't even look human. It's definitely stuff that myths are made of.
The O'Learys sold their cottage in 1879 and left their beloved Holy Family Parish, moving to South Halsted Street on the city's outskirts. Catherine O'Leary became a recluse, only leaving the house to attend Mass and run errands.
I believe her life became sadder and sadder, really, because she was, being accused on all sides, really. It started with the newspapers, and then that story spread.
Catherine's husband, Patrick, died in 1894. She passed a year later, reportedly of pneumonia.
I think she just couldn't get over it. And my grandmother said Mrs. O'Leary died of a broken heart.
But even in death, O'Leary couldn't escape the abuse.
People would not allow anybody to go to her grave because when people would, it was actually desecrated. People would leave garbage there and awful notes and signs.
The city embraces that myth. For decades after, Chicago would officially celebrate the anniversary of the fire. And they would have Catherine O'Leary reenactors, walk through town with a cow.
To this day, nobody knows who or what started the fire. Some suspect one of the O'Leary's tenants, the McLaughlins, may have snuck into the barn to steal some milk for a celebratory punch.
Another story is that a group of neighborhood kids were playing poker in the O'Leary barn, and somebody knocked over a lantern. There's theories of a guy with the nickname Pegleg Sullivan was smoking a pipe and lit the barn on fire.
While the cause of the Great Fire was disputed, most Chicagoans agreed on one thing. It changed their city for the better. Rubble and debris were shoved into Lake Michigan, creating part of what is now Grant Park. By clearing away old wooden buildings, the fire made way for a new, more modern city.
You should look at the fire like a Chicagoan would look at it, not as a disaster, total disaster. I mean, it takes out a lot of bad stuff as far as housing goes. Wooden buildings that are haphazardly put up, all that stuff disappears overnight.
Even as it grew into a modern metropolis, it retained the soul of a frontier town.
Chicago was something that was built, and I say this with ultimate respect, with hustle and chutzpah and energy, and people acting with great independence, creativity, pragmatism. Get something done. If there's a problem, solve it, move on. So Chicago fire is, to me, just another example of this Chicago dynamic mind spirit in action.
As for the O'Leary cottage, it would eventually be demolished. Nearly a century after the fire, the city of Chicago bought the site and put it to a fitting use. Though it took well over a century, Catherine O'Leary's family would finally be vindicated. Chicago City Council voted on a resolution that officially absolved her of blame in 1997.
My grandmother is Mrs. O'Leary's granddaughter, and she didn't really talk about it too much because they knew the rest of the city thought that they were guilty.
This is a copy of the official resolution drawn up by the City Council to exonerate my relative, Mrs. Kate O'Leary, of any wrongdoing associated with the fire.
Isn't that cool? They made it official.
I just wish that she could have been there to be presented with a resolution herself. I think she would be thrilled.
I'm working on that, Edna. I got to do it on the other computer, but I almost got it done. I'm You're probably in the sandbox. Christy. You got a lot to say, didn't you? I would too. Okay. That's one down, Donnie.
You know what that whole O'Leary story kind of the thought that I had about it was, as I was watching it, I was thinking it's as if sometimes the universe just comes along and takes a bucket full of shit and just dumps it on your head.
Well,
That lady
thing
got a
is
bucketed.
yeah, and I think the whole thing was that's where immigrants were treated, and there were immigrants that were poor. In one, guy was even there. A reporter was like, "It's no big deal. It's the poor Irish tenement part of town that's starting, to burn." Of course, then it traveled all through. Now, did you see on that video? I don't remember if you saw it last night or tonight. It started right there where the massacre was, where Fort Dearborn and Fort Douglas and all that other stuff. You tell me that ground is not cursed. I'm looking in the sandbox for Aunt Edna. Keep talking about the cow. I've almost got it.
Yeah, it's just, Chicago has real bad luck when it comes to fires. That's not the last one either.
Yeah, true. All right, I cannot get to the sound, but I see Aunt Edna. So are they telling me that she's got blocked from YouTube?
No, I mean, I see her. I see her in the StreamYard comments. I see her just fine.
I see her in the StreamYard, and I see her right here on YouTube. Or
oh no, Anna says she's good. She says she's good. She says Vixen needs to check her
says
settings.
she's not there, and I can't. She's not in the box either, so she's not blocked. Maybe go out and come back in.
Oh, hey, Big Cole.
Hey, Big Cole. Hey, everybody.
It's okay. I've been blocked by so many random people. I can't even keep track of who I'm blocked by nowadays.
She's not in the sandbox. Okay. So I don't know what the issue is, but maybe go out and come back in. It could be Firefox. It could be, I don't know. There's so many different things happening with this. I've got to get back on Chrome. They've got to fix their glitches and make the videos play because this is some BS, man. It was funny because when I was talking to Katie, I kept thinking, and I think I said this last night, that I was wondering where I was, like, how much say did I have? And I thought, man, I pay for this every month. Somebody owes me some damn money. Give me some help in here, because if you're on a free app, you kind of feel bad about complaining, like fix all the bugs. Well, it's free, so you can't really, raise a ruckus. All right, so the next one, what did we say, Donnie? It was the wonderful World's Fair. Now, it's going to start right away. Don't let the music scare you, but that's the only way I can get it in here, and then I'll stop it. So here we go.
I'm going to go out for a smoke. I'll be back. Okay. I'll be watching in the chat.
Are you going to watch? This is the World's Fair.
Yeah. Hey, guys, when I step away to smoke, that means I'm actually in the chat watching. So that's when I'm more active in the chat room because I don't like to chat while I'm up here at the same time.
There you go.
Right, I'll be back.
Well, I present to you the Chicago World's Fair. Now, why it was important. After the fire, it didn't take them long to rebuild. In fact, a lot of people thought it was kind of a blessing because it got rid of a lot of old, nasty buildings and old wood things, and this is the way it was. And they rebuilt. They kind of went at it like, all right, perfect opportunity to rebuild the city. And that's what they did. Yep, the Devil in the White City. And it was called the White City because they threw this thing up in a swamp. I mean, in like no time, they were going to get this done. And a lot of things happened along the way. Some of the best, architects that that they were counting on actually died in the middle of it, and somebody else had to pick up the ball. Oh, you got her unblocked. Thank you, Vixen. I appreciate that. So it was very important for them to have this big show for the world. They bid on it with a lot of other countries. Chicago won. then they had to come up with how in the world were they going to build this wondrous place on short, short notice. So they built a temporary city, not meant to last much longer than 2 years, and they built it with something called staff. I think I have that correct. It's a mixture of plaster and some kind of fiber, like maybe hay or something like that. And they threw this up and made these elaborate, uh, big old buildings for everybody to go through. And they painted it white, and it just glistened, and they called it the White City. So here we go, a little bit about the World's Fair. News of the World's Columbian Expedition to be held in 1893 in Chicago, Illinois, drew a young Ferris to the city. In 1891, the directors of the World Columbian Expedition issued a challenge to American engineers to conceive of a monument for the fair that would surpass the Eiffel Tower, the great structure of Paris International Exposition in 1889. The planners wanted something original, daring, and unique. Ferris responded with a proposed wheel from which visitors would be able to view the entire expedition, a wheel that would out-Eiffel Eiffel. Why was the 1893 fair so important? Daniel Burnham, the eminent architect charged with turning a boggy square mile of Chicago into a world-dazzling showpiece, assembled an all-star team of designers and gave them one directive: make no little plans. The last expedition, held in Paris, must be outdone, and so they began. Many new products familiar to us today and inventions were introduced. William Wrigley Jr. handed out gum to sell his soap and baking powder. The gum became the most popular item, so he began mass-producing gum and introduced it at the fair. The first flavor was juicy fruit, and mints and cinnamons followed soon after. A former slave named Nancy Green got her fame by taking on the role as Aunt Jemima. Her pancakes were a sensation. Cracker Jacks also got their start at the Chicago Fair, but the prizes inside the box didn't start till 1912. Spray paint, new shoes, and a beer competition that was won by, you guessed it, Pabst Blue Ribbon. Josephine Cochran invented the first dishwasher in 1886 after years of trying to find a way to wash dishes faster than her servants could. The dishwasher she invented had compartments for the dishes that were turned by a motorized wheel. She introduced this invention at the World's Fair in 1893. The very first moving sidewalk was one of the exhibits. It cost 5 cents to ride, and riders could stand or walk on the first platform, which traveled at about 2 miles per hour, or sit up in the second parallel platform, which ran at 4 miles per hour and had benches. Unfortunately, the sidewalk was unreliable and kept breaking down. However, when it did work, it was capable of carrying about 6,000 people at a time. On May 1st, President Grover Cleveland pushed a button that lit nearly 100,000 incandescent lamps, illuminating the grand white city. Squashed pennies as souvenirs to commemorative stamps and coins. So many inventions were introduced in 1893, but nothing really stood out like the Ferris wheel. The squished penny started there, Donnie. Have you ever got one of those?
I mean, I've seen him. I saw him at Gettysburg, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I saw one of those things at the gift shop at Gettysburg.
That's where it started. 1893, man. The Ferris wheel. It was really something. There's the city. It was something. It was all white. People just cried when they walked in. They never saw anything like it. See, now normally those words wouldn't drag.
He was born in Galesburg, Illinois, and moved to Pittsburgh because Carnegie was making steel here. And he was a bridge builder, that is, Ferris was, and he was already a well-respected bridge builder.
On Arch Street, where Ferris lived for several years. The plaque on the front of the house tells you the wheel debuted in 1893.
The French had just designed and built the Eiffel Tower, and that was to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the French Revolution. Chicago was having basically the Chicago World's Fair, and it was to commemorate the 400th anniversary of Columbus landing on America. And they were looking for something to challenge the Eiffel Tower. Ferris was 32 years old when he designed the wheel. He designed it in a Chicago chop house, and he designed it on a napkin, and it went from napkin to reality. It was an architectural challenge. It was an engineering challenge. I could see him as an engineer really being challenged by that idea. You know, how can we get something almost 1 million pounds? And if we do it, how are we going to turn it? Well, you know, all of that was just enormous. It required such engineering feats to be left. And he did it.
Some Pittsburgh engineers get formal invitations to be in Chicago for the inaugural ride on June 21st, 1893 at 3:00 p.m. The Ferris wheel is born.
It's 264 feet tall, and the axle itself was the largest single piece of steel made at that time, and it was 10 tons. There were 36 cars. They were glass enclosed. They could accommodate 60 people, 40 people sitting, 20 people standing. So over 2,100 people would be in Ferris's wheel.
Yeah, they were like...
He used the same suspension ideas that they used on bridges in building the wheel. It would take 10 minutes to make one revolution, and a ride was 2 revolutions. He charged them 50 cents per to ride in the Ferris wheel, but 1.5 million people rode on the Ferris wheel in the 6 months that it was spinning around at the Chicago Exposition. They're up, 264 feet. They're on top of the city of Chicago. They've got Lake Michigan right to the east. I mean, it must have been a beautiful sight. And certainly for that time and that place, it was really heights that people had never been.
Isn't that something, Donnie?
After the fair, the wheel was sold and dismantled, then moved to St. Louis.
Was that like the world's first amusement park
Things
ride?
had fallen apart for Ferris.
Pretty much.
Ferris's bridge
Yeah,
company.
people must have been flipping out when they wrote that thing for the first time. They must have thought that it was like this crazy awesome roller coaster.
He moved into the Hotel Duquesne in downtown Pittsburgh.
And then he died fairly young and alone, pretty miserable, I think.
Ferris died at Mercy Hospital, apparently of typhoid fever, age 38. But his name is immortal because of the wheel. And maybe it's
quite the thing. Yes, Ted. Absolutely. That's actual footage of the wheel in 1893. $27 million attended the fair. Killing it on them keys, ain't he? There you go. Chicago World's Fair and the White City. So if you hear about the devil in the White City, that's it right there, all lit up with electricity without wires. There was an amazing amount of stuff at that fair. What do you think, Donnie?
Man, these people, it's easy to take that kind of stuff for granted because nowadays we're so used to the sight of like the slingshot or these crazy roller coasters where everyone flips out.
Right.
But for a lot of these people, they had never seen anything like this in their entire lives.
Ferris.
So these,
and the stuff, I'm looking for the other video. I think I found it. The stuff that now it's going to start again, and I'll take it down so we can finish talking about it. But I have to get it loaded up here. The Ferris wheel still to this day. The man died penniless. His wife left him. They took in enough in the first couple of weeks for that Ferris wheel to pay for it. But he got involved in bad business deals. He was an architect and, so many other things. And, but like they said, the Ferris wheel, his name lives on in Ferris. Of course, we call it all Ferris wheels. There's thousands of them around the world right now. I mean, in places like Dubai and in Paris and, Las Vegas and all these different places that bigger, more, but nothing will match the first one, which again held 60 people in one car. I think it was like 20 standing and 40 sitting or something like that. And people got married in there. They took lunches up there. This picnic was a huge deal. Things we still have today that were introduced then, of course, the Juicy Fruit gum, Pabst Blue Ribbon, beer, which I don't know how that won, but there you go. And the zipper and the dishwasher and all of these different inventions all in one place. There was so much art donated from around the world in just the art building that they just had it up helter skelter all over the place. It was like they said it was like walking through a nightmare. Nothing matched and nothing was set up. But some of the other exhibitions, like the belly dancers, which you saw some pictures there, the trolley that's now in every airport, the people movers that all started there. So many things from there, and that was like one of the really good things from Chicago that Donnie and I were able to find. They had another fair not long after that, but that one really set some precedent, So there's that. So here's another tragedy that Donnie and I wanted to bring to your attention. little good, little, but a whole lot of bad from Chicago. I hate to say it, but the Iroquois Theater fire, I can't even talk, was another thing that set precedent in Chicago. It was a terrible event. There was a play for children. It was during a matinee right after Christmas, right before New Year's on that Saturday. And in order to open the theater in time, they greased a lot of palms, passed through a lot of politicians, fire marshals, inspectors of all kinds. There was everywhere you looked, there was something that was either pushed aside, not finished. Like they had a hookup for the fire hoses, but no fire hoses. The architects didn't like the way the exit doors looked, so they covered them with heavy draperies. They wouldn't let them put exit on them, to say, this is the way out. The doors open in instead of out. And the fact that they packed every person they possibly could in here for this matinee. It was literally, again, another phrase that lives to this day, standing room only. And that was something that was started here in Chicago, where they had people actually standing in the aisles, standing in the I forget what they call it, the gallery up top. And they even, just like Titanic, they put a metal gate fence and heavy lock on the gate to go up and down from the gallery, because they didn't want people sneaking in. They made every mistake possible. And here's a little video about that. But it did change a lot of things going on in the future, things that we take for granted now, like exits that are marked and doors that open up. And they hold a panic bar, so when you hit it, the door opens, you go out, instead of people piling up and not being able to open that door. So here we go, Donnie. You ready? Did you want to say anything about this beforehand?
No, but do you know offhand how many people total passed away in this
I know
fire?
it tells you for sure in this vid.
Okay.
I don't want to guess. I think I know, but there's been so many tragedies, so many videos doing this. I don't want to get it mixed up, and let's watch and see. I'm pretty sure they tell you in here. Oh! I've got a PayPal, Big Cole. If mods want to drop that. But thank you for even asking. That's very sweet of you. 1903, Donnie. There it is. I'm so sorry these videos are dragging, guys. It's not too bad, but I can see it. And just like the Titanic, they said it was absolutely fireproof. Where they said the Titanic was unsinkable. The curse, man. Tempt God.
Yeah, you don't need to brag that it's fireproof.
Yeah.
That's just kind of asking for it.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah.
Terrible. Thank you, Uncommon. $600 in that day. In less than 15 minutes.
Oh,
in less than 15 minutes. Yeah,
that's a lot of people.
The fumes from all of the combustion, the material and,
The Iroquois Theater fire of 1903 was the deadliest building fire in American history. The victims, mostly women and children, died in the most dreadful of circumstances, asphyxiated in their seats, trampled upon by a panicking audience, or burned beyond recognition. It was a tragedy that never should have occurred. Let me set the scene, so to speak. The Iroquois Theater was a new playhouse, all of 5 weeks old. It was a lavishly decorated theater that wrapped itself around a building at the corner of Randolph and Dearborn Streets, where the Oriental Theater is now. It was, its owners boasted, absolutely fireproof. The Iroquois was built to stage huge musical productions, and its premiere offering was a silly musical comedy entitled Mr. Bluebeard. The cast numbered a staggering 280 performers, but that included about 100 extras, mostly youngsters, who were hired locally to portray animal characters. The show's star was a favorite of Chicago audiences, Eddie Foy. He bustled about the stage in the role of Sister Ann, wiggling an unwieldy bustle, often in a direction directly opposite from the way he was moving. Mr. Bluebeard had opened earlier in New York to mixed reviews. The music critics there said was loud, the plot ridiculous, and Eddie Foy, one complained, was only intermittently funny. At any rate, he was not so noisy. But the show managed to run 21 weeks in New York. The company then went on the road, playing Pittsburgh, Indianapolis, and Cleveland, biding time until the completion of the Iroquois. In Cleveland, a curtain caught fire because of an electrical overload, but it was quickly extinguished and no one appeared concerned. Despite a series of labor slowdowns that had delayed its completion, the Iroquois Theater opened in time for the Thanksgiving holiday. To help make up for lost time, performances of Mr. Bluebeard were being held every night and at matinees as well on Wednesdays and Saturdays. Opening night on November 23rd, 1903 was a festive affair. A glittering tuxedo and ball gown audience, most of Chicago's high society, was there. And another incident occurred. But again, nothing was made of it. The theater's ushers, it turned out, had no idea what to do in an emergency. On Wednesday, December 30th, 2 days before Mr. Bluebeard was to close to make way for another musical, the 2 p.m. matinee performance drew a full house, a holiday crowd, so many that there were 200 standees in the orchestra, dress circle, and top balcony, the gallery. In all, the house held nearly 2,000 persons. On stage, peeking out from behind the curtain, Eddie Foy said he had never seen so many women and children in an audience. Even the gallery was full of mothers and their youngsters. It was during the second act that the disaster happened. Started by a short circuit in a floodlight, an almost similar malfunction to what had occurred weeks earlier in Cleveland.
That's the actual light, Donny.
The sparks ignited a drop curtain, and soon all the nearly 300 scenic drop curtains were in flames. Foy rushed out onto the stage to try and calm the audience. He called for the asbestos fire curtain to be dropped, but he became snagged while not even halfway down. Then a blast of air shot through the auditorium when a door backstage was opened by fleeing actors and stagehands. It swept toward the ceiling of the top balcony, the gallery, a blast of heated, gaseous fumes. To give you an idea of the horrible scenes that followed, I'd like to read a few excerpts from the book. One of the few survivors who was in the gallery, that is the top balcony, was James Strong. Strong was standing with his mother, wife, and niece in the rear of the gallery. He tried to get to the stairway that led down to the dress circle level, but it was too crowded. So they ran down the aisle by the side of the gallery rows and down a short flight of steps to the middle entranceway. But the door there was locked. Strong threw himself against it without success. He then stretched on his toes as far as he could and smashed the glass transom above the door with his fist. Strong hoisted himself up and threw the transom. But once on the other side in the hallway, he found the door secured with a padlock. Just then another man happened to run by. Together the two of them tried to break open the door without success. We worked at the padlock like crazy men, but could make no impression upon it, Strong said, nor could we break the door. The other man boosted Strong up to the transom in the hope that he could pull his family on the other side through it. Strong got the upper portion of his body through and saw his family below. But just at that second, he said, the flames swept through the balcony and smoke poured over the transom. Strong felt himself suffocating, lost his grip, and fell back into the hallway outside. On the other side of the door, His mother, his wife, and his niece lay dead. The convergence of those fleeing the gallery and those exiting the dress circle created an impenetrable tangle. With the theater in darkness except for the glow cast by the flames in the auditorium, the panic remained unchecked. Covering his mouth with a handkerchief, 70-year-old D.W. Demick made it down from the gallery to the dress circle. He was shocked. People were packed like cordwood, he said. Demick squeezed past many who were writhing on the floor. He caught hold of the arms of one woman who was alive but lying near the bottom of a heap of bodies, trapped by her feet. He pulled her out. Demick then tried to rescue a man who was also caught by the feet. He braced himself against the stairs to get a purchase and started tugging, but he was unable to pull the man free. Those still upright started down the stairwell, but they found their way blocked by locked accordion gates. Soon as fumes from the burning scenery spread through the theater, the people fell, choking, and died, their bodies creating another pile of corpses at each of the gates. The side of the Iroquois Theater faced a narrow alley across the back of the old Tremont House, a landmark hotel that had only recently been taken over by Northwestern University to house its graduate schools. The commotion in the alleyway attracted the attention of some law students who, although it was vacation time, were studying in a library in the rear of the third floor of the building. At the same time, a group of painters working in another room on the third floor also heard the noise from the alleyway. Together, students and painters carried the planks and ladders to the back windows of a lecture room that faced an emergency exit of the gallery, the top balcony of the theater, across the alleyway. They ran out a ladder across the narrow gap, and a man fleeing the inferno inside the theater managed to crawl across it. Another man behind him tried, but the ladder slipped on the ice-covered sill of the lecture room, and he fell to the ground, lifeless. The painters quickly positioned the planks across the gap between the building and the theater and dropped to their knees to anchor the wooden planks. "Come on," they called out. 16-year-old Hortense Lang was the first to cross, dragging her 11-year-old sister Irene. "I was going to jump," she sobbed to the painters, "but I thought of my mother." Behind them came 13-year-old Carrie Anderson, who was guiding two smaller children across the makeshift gangway. In all, a dozen persons edged their way over the planks. The last to cross was Alice Kilroy, a Chicago schoolteacher. Kilroy was no sooner drawn inside the Northwestern lecture room than a pillar of fire bursting from the theater struck the wall of the school building. Across the narrow alleyway, women and children still on the exit landing of the theater died there, the bodies of some dropping to the ground. Firemen rushed into the school and up to the third floor to cross the planks with a hose in order to spray water into the gallery, but the flames made them retreat. With them was Fire Marshal John Campion. "Is there any living person here?" he called out. No one answered. "If anyone here is alive," he shouted again, "groan and make some sound. We'll take you out." Again, no one responded. Campion ordered his men to fall back. As they edged backward over the planks, the fire in the theater billowed once more. A total of 602 persons died in the Iroquois Theater fire. Every morgue in Chicago was jam-packed with bodies. Inside one of them, a reporter wrote, "In one respect, all the bodies looked alike." The left arm of nearly every victim was held stiff and close to the side, while the right hand was outstretched as if warding off peril. It was such an outstretched hand that attracted the attention of Patrick O'Donnell. Walking through the aisles at one morgue, O'Donnell suddenly stopped to examine a woman's hand that extended from beneath a sheet. On it was the ring he had given his wife for Christmas. O'Donnell knelt and kissed the hand. No one in Chicago celebrated New Year's Eve the next day, Thursday. All dinners, all parties, all dances were canceled. Friday New Year's Day was gloomy. Saturday even grimmer, as victims who had been identified were laid to rest, while relatives still searched among the bodies at the morgues for a recognizable loved one.
Most of these were teachers. Well, kids. It's awful. These are actual pictures of the morning of the fire, and like I said, it was about 15 minutes, and it was over. And it was over. And you know, it was absolutely horrible.
I said at the beginning of this talk that the Iroquois Theater fire was a tragedy that never should have occurred, but there were many questions raised by it. Why had the asbestos fire curtain become snagged? Without it, there was no shield between the fire on stage and the audience in the auditorium. Who had left the critical ventilators in the skylights above the stage tied down during construction? There was no way that the flames and fumes could exit except outward toward the audience. Why were there no exit signs whatsoever throughout the theater? Beside which, the exits were concealed behind heavy draperies. No one in the audience knew where to go. Why indeed was a newfangled lock used on the exit doors? Only one usher knew how to open them, and then only because he had tried to do so out of curiosity. Why, in fact, hadn't there been a fire drill and the ushers instructed about what to do in an emergency? Where did those accordion gates come from? They were drawn and padlocked across the stairways leading to the gallery, the top floor, the top balcony, to prevent balcony goers there from sneaking down to better seats during a performance. And this was a sold-out audience. But the gates were not in the plans approved by the city, and because they blocked the means of escape, they would not have been permitted. How is it possible that so many basic safety features were not in place? Why wasn't there any sprinkler system installed in the theater? Why weren't there any hoses for the standpipes backstage? Why, for that matter, wasn't there any water whatsoever for those pipes? The sprinkler system, the hoses, the water for them, all were required by law. How come a battalion chief inspected the theater, noticed the lack of firefighting equipment, but never felt the need to report it to superiors? Who, in fact, considering all the deficiencies in the building's fire safety, who in the city's building department had ever given the okay permitting the theater to open 5 weeks earlier? Who then was responsible for the fire? The theater's architect for not seeing that the exits were clearly marked and accessible? The theater's managers for not holding any fire drills or seeing that the fire hoses were attached and working? Fire department officials for not making certain that all the safety regulations were enforced? The construction company that had not seen fit to check that the ventilators were operable? The city inspector who had turned his eye from all the violations? Who? Who was responsible? Who, in fact, was held responsible?
there we go. Another one.
There we have it, folks. Man,
I mean,
that was a pretty god awful situation.
yeah.
It's like
go ahead.
I was just gonna say it's like they did that on purpose. I don't think that was incompetence. I mean, they padlocked the exit doors. They padlocked it.
The gates across the thing. I mean, I don't know what these people were thinking, but I thought twice about telling the whole story and letting the people speak what they went through trying to get out of this building, because if it helps one person think about when you're in a theater, don't just assume everybody's got it. You know, it's like when you get in a plane, everybody says, "Are you afraid of flying?" Well, not really, but I don't know if I trust the guy at the, at the wheel. And you think, well, they have to go through this, and they have to go through that kind of test. I always check everything. I'm one of those, like, Buffalo Bill. Was it Buffalo Bill? It died in the poker game. Glenn or Ted, somebody will tell us. But had the dead man's hand and all that. He always went into a building. He would sit and look at the exit. He knew where his exits were. These people didn't have a chance. And if they did get to a door, it was locked or it was covered. It was a mess. So, to them,
it seems like everyone in the chat is pretty much on board that shit was on purpose. That wasn't.
Oh my gosh, Big Cole. Thank you
Big
so
Cole.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Oh my goodness. That's gonna cover us for if we get StreamYard working. And now I'm coughing like crazy every time I talk. So thank you, God. Thank you so much, darling. So much. I always use the money where I say it's gonna go to. For those of you who sent money for Mr. Dickens and went to get his food and the medicine and everything else, he had the best. I sat there and I told him, you got the best food, the best medicine, the best doctors, the best friends, the best love around the world, So all of that absolutely goes to keep this podcast on. After tonight, I'm not sure it should be on, but it's gonna go to fix the problems. Sorry, a little bit more tea. But yeah, that's a tragedy. At the very least, some good things came from it that last forever. And I'm not sure, I haven't dug too deep into the rabbit hole to see if it was on purpose, but there was a lot of symbols going on there and a lot of bad things that should have never happened. But please, and at the very least, let it be, keep you aware of your surroundings and don't trust other people to keep you safe. Does that make sense? And there was another one, Donnie, if you want to briefly tell about the other fire.
Okay, so we're talking about the Our Lady of Angels. We don't have a video for that, but this one was 1958, December 1st, 1958. It was a Catholic school with kids between age kindergarten to the 8th grade, about 1,600 kids enrolled in this school. And it was same kind of situation. Fire broke out. Yeah, fire broke out. It started in the basement, and then it had like a flash, like at the Iroquois Theater. And the second floor just, and these are all kids, and the second floor just burst into flames. The kids are jumping out the window, and it's, even though it's the second floor, it's actually 3 stories up, so you have little kids on fire jumping out the window. And and when people, according to witnesses, the scene looked like it was raining children with their clothes and their hair on fire, and really bad stuff. And when you research that history, you start seeing all these pictures of these dead children. I'm like, man, damn, it's pretty dark and grim. The total death count was 92 children and 3 teachers who were nuns. And yeah, it was so bad. It was like the Iroquois Theater. And the Iroquois Theater had 602. This one was 95, but they were all little kids. It was all over, again, just like the Iroquois Theater. It was all over national news. The whole city was in mourning. The whole country was in mourning. And there were a lot of heroic deeds too. some of the priests and the nuns, they actually very heroically gave their lives to save some of the kids, and their actions should be remembered and honored. But yeah, it's called the Our Lady of Angels. If anyone wants to look into it, I will. Warning though, there are pictures of dead kids. I
It's
don't know if
pretty
you want to be
horrible.
looking at that.
There was a couple of pictures in the intro video that we did last night for Chicago, and I just did the flashes. And in fact, one of them was a police officer carrying down a child who had lost his shoes and was just hanging over his shoulder. And even then, I had to like cartoon it, make it more of an outline than, just out of respect, because I cannot imagine the horrific faces on the parents that were waiting in.
Cisco, do you remember that show you were recommending to me that you were a fan of, The Faces of the Forgotten? That guy who goes
Faces,
to like
yes,
graveyard. He
yes.
actually did an episode on the
Oh, good. He's
Our Lady of
wonderful.
Angels fire, and that boy in the photo, he actually found his grave.
Oh,
And then he found his father's grave next to it, and he goes into a bit of the story about like their lives and the lives
Faces
of
Forgotten
people.
is a wonderful YouTube channel. If you're not watching, are you kidding me? Welcome in. I saw you pop in, and I didn't want to say anything at the time in the video, but yeah, I mean, any fire and any, the imagine and the amount of people saying, how could something like this happen in a place that was obviously very religious based place? But somebody once told me that, why would God allow a busload of kids to go off a cliff? And that person said, God's heart's the first one to break. But again, you have to understand that souls pick times and exits, and for some reason, people have to go through what they're going through. And it's such a terrible part of this whole thing to imagine that. But I'm telling you, when you're going through something hard, you kind of think, what am I supposed to get from this? Am I supposed to be the person who gives care to the sick loved one, and that's a blessing for me to go through that, as well as there's so many different levels. It's not just one thing. There's no good thing that could come out of a bunch of kids dying at an Iroquois theater, or these mothers that couldn't get their kids out. It's those are the hardest things in life to go through, and try to find a reason for it to happen. But in other ways, you can also look at those tragedies and try to keep it from happening again, and to use it not in vain, but to help others. It's really the only way I can get through it. But I still say Chicago's cursed, Donnie. What about you?
Well, think about it, folks. We just saw the Chicago fire, right? That was pretty bad. We saw the Iroquois Theater. That was really bad. And now that Our Lady of Angels, that was pretty bad too. And then there was the other one with the ship sinking, remember? In the intro video? That ship that was capsizing that was like docked there, and then all those people that like drowned. I mean, that's all in the same place, folks. It's all in the same place, same area, same vicinity, So, oh, Cisco, you're muted.
I'm sorry. The only way I can load these things, they just come up all of a sudden. I didn't mean to cut you off there, Donnie, but I agree completely. Now tonight, again, Steve was supposed to be with us. He is not feeling well. I think he got hit with the same thing I got hit with. Things come in like that, they get you where you're not doing too good. And since I've had a lousy couple weeks, I'm not at my best, but I'm up and strong now, and we're powering through all these little, oh gosh, little quirks and electronic things and all kinds of other stuff going on. So I appreciate you guys hanging in there. Donnie and I, were originally going to do this in 3 nights, so we're kind of sort of powering through. So many things happen in Chicago, and there's so many hauntings. And we mentioned quite a few of them in the intro, with different gangsters, and Al Capone being absolutely driven crazy by one of the victims of the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. Yes, he had syphilis. Yes, he was crazy a little bit to begin with, but there was multiple witnesses that saw this ghost. Multiple. So, that's definitely a big story. Lots of different things. In Chicago, it's kind of like Washington slept here, Anywhere you go where that was Revolutionary War around here in the East Coast for sure. But Al Capone is that way in Chicago. It'll be like Al Capone stayed here. Al Capone, this was his booth. This was that. And it's oftentimes his ghost is seen. And again, we have to understand that just like Johnny Cash and multiple other ghosts, they don't have to just show up in one place. A lot of those could be true. But for sure, the biggest ghost story around him is him being driven crazy by a ghost named Jimmy.
Is there a rule somewhere that a ghost can only be confined to one space? Can't
Nope.
a ghost haunt multiple locations?
Yes.
I thought they weren't limited by that.
They're not limited. Some are. Some aren't.
Yeah,
They're all
some
not
are,
the same. Some almost put themselves in their own self-built cage, if you know what I mean, or box.
Yeah.
And stay in one spot or attached to a thing or multiple things. You know, if there's one thing I've learned in 50 years, it's that, you know, the ghosts are as individuals we are. And it seems like they do have that ability to be almost omnipresent in a lot of different ways. You know, they'll pop up in Chicago by somebody's bedside to say goodbye, and a few minutes later they'll be in, you know, Arizona or something, you know, and saying goodbye to somebody else, or even sometimes at the same time, very close to the same time. So there you go. So here's another one, Donnie, if you're ready for this. I know we're kind of jamming this stuff at you, but again, we were supposed to do this in 3 nights, and with everything going on with me and everything else, we are here trying to get it all in like 2. And I'm kind of ready for a little ghost story. How about you, Donnie?
Oh yeah, I'm down.
One of the most famous ghost stories ever, We Promised You Haunted Hitchhikers, is the out of Chicago. It's on Archer Avenue. There's so many different ghost stories, but the number one comes from a cemetery called Resurrection Cemetery, and it's Resurrection Mary. So I give you Resurrection Mary. Here we go.
Resurrection Mary is, without a doubt, the most famous ghost in Chicago. But she is only one of a number of so-called vanishing hitchhikers that have been seen in many parts of the world, from England and Scotland to China and Japan, India, South America, for well over 100 years. And our version of the story, our Resurrection Mary, is the most famous of the vanishing hitchhikers, and that is because of her staying power. She has continued to have so many eyewitnesses that have experienced her up until the present day, and that makes her unique among all the vanishing hitchhikers. No one quite is sure who Resurrection Mary was in life. There are a number of versions of the story that attempt to connect the ghost to one or another young woman that lived and died in Chicago, usually in the 1920s or 30s. There's a version of the story that talks about little Anna Norkus, who was a 12-year-old girl that died in 1927 on the way home from a dance on the eve of her 12th birthday. She was buried in Resurrection Cemetery, and her ghost is seen traversing Archer Avenue outside late at night. There's a version of the story that connects Resurrection Mary to a girl named Mary Miskowski that was from the Bridgeport neighborhood on the south side that was reportedly killed on her way home from a Halloween party in the 1930s. There are many different versions of the story, but without a doubt, the one that has lasted longest and has convinced so many of its reality is the story of Mary Bergovie. Mary Bergovie was a beautiful young woman, a factory worker in the packing town of the Stockyards district in the back of the yards. She lived on South Damon Avenue, where she worked 6 days a week and went out dancing just about every night. Her favorite place to dance was the old O. Henry Ballroom out on Archer Avenue, today still operating as the Willowbrook Ballroom. She had gone out shopping on a spring afternoon in 1934 with a friend of hers and made a double date with some young men that they had met for later on that night. That night, they went out dancing at the Willowbrook Ballroom, and at the end of the evening, about 1:30 in the morning, when the ballrooms closed, Mary still wanted to dance as usual. So she begged her escort to take them into the city where some of the nightclubs were open later. And so he, of course, complied. They went into the city, they danced till about 4 o'clock in the morning, and then headed out to make their way back to the back of the yard. Well, as they were leaving the loop, the car they were driving in got into a deadly accident at the intersection of Lake Street and Wacker Drive. The car struck one of the support beams of the Lake Street elevated train structure. Mary was sitting in the front passenger seat and went through the window and died on the way to the hospital. She was buried at Resurrection Cemetery a few days later, and a few days after the burial, visitors to the cemetery began to report to the cemetery management that they were seeing a young woman dressed in a party dress with no shoes on, wandering around that section of the cemetery where Mary had been recently buried. When we hear about ghost stories, we usually hear about someone seeing a wispy form across the room or a shadowy figure in the corner. The stories of Resurrection Mary are never of that nature. Whenever someone encounters her, she is as real as can be. Men who'd never met Mary Bergovie were reporting that they had danced with this beautiful stranger who they had met on the ballroom floor, who seemed cold to the touch when they danced with her. She didn't have much to say. She was a woman of few words, but at the end of the evening, she would beg for a ride home. The young man was always happy to comply, but he could only get her so far. As they passed the gates of Resurrection Cemetery, driving home on Archer Road, she would either simply vanish from the car or throw the car door open and run into the darkness, disappearing right through the cemetery fence and into the darkness of the cemetery beyond. One of the most famous encounters with Resurrection Mary, there was a man that was driving past the cemetery. He was distracted by some movement towards the cemetery gate. And as he looked, he saw that there was a young woman that was trapped inside the cemetery. And she was standing at the front gates, clutching the bars, looking very much afraid. The man figured that she had been locked inside the cemetery after closing time. It's an enormous place. He turned around in his car and went back to the police station and reported what he had seen. And the police officer at the desk called the caretaker of Resurrection to meet 2 officers at the front gates to let the young woman out and make sure she was okay. They met the caretaker at the front gates a few minutes later and found no trace of anyone there. But what they did find was that the bars that the young woman had been clutching had been pried apart as if by some incredible heat, and burned into the metal were the imprint of 2 what were described later as delicate hands. I met people who came in the weeks that followed to look at the bars that they believed had been bent by Resurrection Mary. And I've been told by many people that saw the bars firsthand before they were repaired that the imprints of the fingerprints were so precise that you could actually see the fingerprints burned into the metal of the bars. The cemetery said that there had been an accident. A cemetery worker had backed a truck into the bars, they said, and bent them. So they had heated them up, and a worker had put on some heavy worker's gloves and had tried to bend the bars back into shape, which they said explained the handprints on the bars. Many, many eyewitnesses who came to see the bars in the weeks that followed went on record saying that the handprints that they saw were the handprints of a child. I think that kind of the magic or the dynamo behind the Resurrection Mary encounters is really the road itself. Archer Avenue was an ancient Indian road, and we know from talking with Native Americans all around the United States that these ancient roads were laid down by their ancestors over lines in the environment that they believed to have spiritual significance.
There you go,
and
Donnie.
They were traditionally and apparently continue to be places where people have supernatural experiences. We do special Archer Avenue tours about quarterly, where we go down. Specifically, we start out at Chet's Melody Lounge across from Resurrection Cemetery, which is very famously associated with the story. Resurrection Mary has gone into Chet's Melody Lounge on several occasions. She was taken there once by a cab driver.
Wait here, please.
Hey, be kind. Welcome in,
She went
baby.
inside to get the cab fare to give him his payment, and she never came out. He went in rather angrily to find her.
Excuse me.
No one had come into the bar all night long. And since that night, they always leave a Bloody Mary at the end of the bar in case she comes in. There's a very, very strong movement to not talk about her, to not talk about Resurrection Mary, and to not even acknowledge that she exists. But there have been, again, so many eyewitnesses testifying to the reality of her that she will not be dismissed.
Well, I guess if you got to dance your way through eternity, that wouldn't be so bad, would it? Resurrection Mary, everybody. And yes, be kind. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We're all sending you love too. Everybody here gets the love and the light, and we're going to power through this mess. I mean, they're trying to hit us electronically and physically and everything else. So hang in there, everybody. We're together.
One of the things that I came across in researching Resurrection Mary was that particular ghost is probably the most witnessed numerically by people than probably any ghost in this country. There's so many people in that area that have claimed to have seen her, and all the encounters were like a little bit different. But yeah, it's like everyone's kind of seeing her all the time. It's getting to the point where people are just like, it's part of the town's like identity now.
Yeah,
because
I can imagine that place is just crawling with stuff, and we came up with so many. I mean, we're kind of flippantly going through a lot of these things where the gangsters are showing up and things like that. In Chicago, it seems that if there's a major thing, like the theater changed hands a couple of times, it's now the Oriental, but most of the other things, like the St. Valentine's Massacre garage is gone. It's a parking lot. All these other things, they just level it and keep it a parking lot. H.H. Holmes' murder mansion is gone. And we were going to talk a lot about him, but I'll tell you what, he has this same energy feel to me as John Wilkes Booth. So every time I started doing a video on him, I started downloading pictures and doing things like that. Things got really weird, and I backed away.
Real quick, for people in the chat, if anyone's not familiar, H.H. Holmes was the serial killer who had the murder castle. So yeah,
in Chicago,
they need to know who we're talking about.
Right. And briefly, his thing is this, and I don't, like I said, I don't have a vid on him. Because his energy, it's extremely psychopathic, arrogant. H.H. Holmes, yes. He even took the name Holmes as an homage to Sherlock Holmes because he felt like he was that intelligent. So he really was a con man. He started out in a perfectly good family. Didn't seem to be any problems. He didn't have any of the like tendencies early, messing with animals and things. He kind of went backwards with everything with him. He was taunted by some boys and drug into an old country doctor's office where they had a skeleton and made him look at the skeleton. And he says that it was the way he was looking at it and the way they were laughing, it kind of burnt a thing into him that he was no longer afraid. He was a doctor. He married a woman, had a young boy. She basically put him through doctor school, and then he left her. She was one of the few that survived him. He went into Chicago, and this was about 7, 8 years before the Chicago Fair. He started finding out that he could do these schemes, these insurance claims. Must have been very early back then to get, like, say, Donnie to take $1 million insurance or whatever it was back then, $100,000, whatever, 10,000, and then sign as me as his beneficiary. Then I kill him and get the money. He was able to do this over and over and over and over again. He would order things and not pay for them, have no intention of paying for them, and try to keep people busy in court. When he first hit Chicago, he got a job, being that he just went through medical school, in a pharmacy. Found out the pharmacist who owned it was sick. His wife was basically running the shop. He wooed her, got her to fill out this insurance policy. The pharmacist disappeared. He died mysteriously, and then she died, and he wound up buying the pharmacy, and that was his first building there in Chicago. He bought another building across the street, which became the Murder Castle, and then he began to build, and it was very much like a Winchester mansion. There were stairways that led nowhere. There were doors that opened to nothing. There were rooms within rooms that were hidden, and only he could get in. He had a chute going from the third floor to the basement that was greased, that he used to slide bodies down. He could have a whole house full of people renting rooms and the businesses downstairs and still conduct the things that he did. He had a live vat. He had a vault that was soundproof that was right next to his bedroom where he could put gas in there. So many young women came, especially around the fair, wound up disappearing. People say anywhere from 27 to 200 and some odd people. I believe it's more towards the 200 or more people. That's just me personally from what I've studied from this guy. The Devil in the White City has an awful lot about that, the book, and now the movie. I hope that they will do it justice, but I hope they also don't lift him up as one of these hero serial killers, because he's just a very bad energy. He's still around to this day on this side. And our friend James from Waynesboro, the Hoover House, actually was at his grave in Chicago, and not Chicago. He's buried where a lot of the Hollywood people are buried, out there. Natalie Wood's not far from him. Anyway, he sat down and was doing burn some for me, Aunt Edna. He was doing a session with a recorder, and he was at H.H. Holmes' grave, and he asked him, did it ever bother you to kill any of the people that you killed? And H.H. Holmes' voice came through and said, some of them. So we were going to do a lot on him, but like I said, every time we focused on him, some weird stuff started happening. So that's basically the gist of it. If you want to hear more of it, I suggest Devil in the White City and the new movie that's coming out. I believe it'll be out Thanksgiving or the holidays, with who did we say? Keanu Reeves and.
I actually heard Keanu dropped out of that project though, so I'm not sure if he's going to be in it.
He may have.
I just saw. I think I saw a headline online
Yeah,
randomly.
it may be out. It may take longer for this movie, but either way, if you want to look up on him, there's a lot on the Murder Castle and the things he did. He moved from basically being a con man and doing this insurance fraud The one murder he was charged with was Paxil's and the children, and I'll briefly tell you that. He had kind of what a business partner named Paxil, who was kind of an alcoholic, a sharp dressed man when he wanted to be, though, and he could do some talking too. Well, his big mistake was thinking that Holmes wouldn't do the things to him that Holmes was doing to other people. And like I said, most of the bodies, he would clean them and sell the skeletons. He would sell them to medical schools. He would sell the bodies to medical schools for experiments and everything else. So there was a lot of that. So Paxil, he did the insurance fraud, convinced Paxil to make him his beneficiary, met Paxil's wife and children, convinced them to get in on the whole thing, said that he was going to come up with another body and Paxil would be hiding somewhere until they got the money and got everything cleared. And he basically kept moving this family back and forth on these trains. He's got the kids. The kids are writing letters to the mother. He never mails the letters. He's telling the wife that Paxil is just going from one station to another, one town to another to hide. He's moving her all around and saying, oh, we just missed him. He's going to be in the next one. He's got to keep moving, yada, yada, yada. Well, he really killed Paxil. Paxil was dead. And then he killed the children. He killed the little girls and stuffed them in a crate and gassed them. And we think that that's when he started his sexual deviance, if you know what I mean. And then he killed the little boy, and they found his bones stuffed in a like a Ben Franklin stove. And he got caught, and what got him, a son of a bitch, was they found the letters the kids had wrote the mother that he never sent on his person in his coat. And then he proceeded to sit in jail and be like a prima donna type person where all these people kept coming in, and he sold, very much like Ronald DeFeo, sold his time and his confessions and his letters and his descriptions of the crime, and each time they would change, and newspapers would pay for his interview. And so basically, you can't believe anything he said. Again, very much like Ronald DeFeo, sitting in jail and having people come and do interviews with him and changing his story time after time after time. Just very psychopathic, narcissistic, con man behavior. So there's H.H. Holmes. You got anything you want to add to that, Donnie?
No, because I mean, I did my own research on him and found quite a bit, but it was a completely different point of view, and I don't know, I think that might be too deep of a debate, because I've seen some people think that it was as low as 3.
True.
Yeah.
You know, and again, you know, I don't disagree with you, but you know, all of the things he had and everything else was leaning more toward, it was multiple people over many years. I mean, the police made up stories, back and forth. The point is he at least killed several, and he was pretty darn proud of it. Go ahead, Donnie.
I just wanted to add, what I found was that the Chicago Police Department at the time was, for some reason, they had to like completely start from scratch. Like they had a brand new Chicago PD, and they had a brand new police chief who was only on the job for like 2 months. And prior to that 2 months, the guy was like a florist. Right. So this guy had no clue what he was doing.
Yeah.
And the way I guess some of the channels that I watched about it, like they were talking about how what they think really happened was that they just took all these unsolved murder cases and blamed it all on H.H. Holmes because the police were so inept. So they just wanted to say, oh, all these unsolved murders, it was this guy.
True.
Yeah.
Also,
so there's
again,
a
lot
to
of
consider.
tones of that Amityville where, you know, you had those personalities mixing around and everything. And be kind, we're right here with you, baby. So, you know, maybe this next video will cheer you up. It's about gangsters and bullets and Tommy guns and Valentine's Day. So that's happy. I'm not making fun.
Maybe I can add a joke.
I'm trying to laugh along with everybody because I found out that laughter really is the best medicine. No matter what you're going through, it doesn't mean you're making little of the situation. It just means you're trying to get that vibration up fast. So,
So
yeah,
that Iroquois theater, right? They changed its name to the Oriental Theater after that? Is that what it
several
still
times,
is?
several
What is
times.
it now?
I'm not 100% sure. I think it's the Oriental. I think that was
Man,
the theater. I'm not 100% sure.
man, they
Don't quote
really
me on
have
that.
a thing. They seem to really have a thing for politically incorrect theater names, huh?
Yeah,
Oh
I don't
man,
know.
you can't.
Like Grauman's Chinese.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean,
I
what
don't know.
next? Like the Indian Curry Theater? I mean, come on, folks.
Oh, come
Think of a
on, man. They
different
pushed
theater
us
name.
off the land and named the streets and
Yeah,
motels and lakes after us. And then
yeah.
they don't pronounce them right, you know. I mean, I'm just surrounded by that. And there's this little broke down theater, motel that's probably been there since the 50s. It's still painted in those, 1950s colors, that aqua with the hot pink, and it's like that Miami 1970s look. And they call it the Lenape Motel, and I'm like, "Hell, we're flattered. Thank you so much." You know what I mean? It's just it's crazy, dude. I was looking at the butter today, and not to get political or anything, but the Aunt Jemima thing, it's worth mentioning. Look at how hard Aunt Jemima worked. She was so thrilled to have that job. She went in there. She was famous. She got on that box of pancake syrup. They put her on the bottle, and she was happy about it. And then, like I think in the 50s or 60s, they kind of changed her, made her more modern looking and stuff. Got away from that Aunt Jemima look. But those people, everybody was thrilled to be the face of something. Uncle Ben's rice, even the Quaker Oats guy, if he
Wait,
even
did they make an
existed.
Aunt Jemima dressed in modern clothes, Cisco?
Yes, they did. Yeah, she had their
Really? Oh,
around
I
the
need to
time
see this.
Betty Crocker, they fixed her up too. But anyhow, then they take everybody off. Now I'm sitting here today looking at the butter, and I see the Land O'Lakes thing. And there's a butter across it says the Land O'Lakes a symbol, and all the land is still there. They just kicked off the Native American. So, how real is that? They kept the land and got rid of the natives.
Damn.
They named him a shitty motel after him. So anyway, this next one, and again, we're trying to power through because we're going to start our Cabin 22 series. By God, I'm going to do this if it kills me, and it might. If the screen goes black, Donnie, take over. If you don't hear from me 15 minutes in the Marines, we're going to get through this as much as we can, and I hope you don't feel like you're being rushed, but we are trying to fit 3 nights into to kind of 1.5 years. And then throughout, if we come up with more stories on Chicago this week, because tonight we are starting Cabin 22, the prequel and part 1, and we are going to go every night this week and listen to the cabin live. And it'll be great because Donnie has heard it, and he wants to talk about it, and some of you guys have heard it, want to talk about it. For you guys who have heard it before, I hope you get other layers this time around. Lynn has not heard the whole story. She will be here with us, wonderful Lynn Monet. She will be with us on Sunday the 30th, I believe, which is Mischief Night, and we will listen to the last chapter, the second part of 6 on that night, and we'll be done. And then, of course, we've got the Halloween costume party, the call in with your calls. Blue, I hope you'll call in. Other people, we'll have the link up there so you can come in if you want. Show your face. Don't. It's up to you. And try to link in with Steve and Sandy and all their trick or treating fun over there. And so we're trying to keep it going for you guys. It's been a rough couple weeks I think everybody's feeling it. I think the frequencies are really, on high. There's a lot going on, and everybody's feeling it, from electronic stuff to, oh, do you, Lynn? That's great. And I think Donnie's got some surprises. So we're just going to try to have fun and power through. But throughout the week, if we remember more stories of the Chicago and want to bring more forward, more of H.H. Holmes or whatever, we'll bring it up along the way in the beginning of before we do the cabin. But those should be between an hour and a half. As you get longer toward the week, the chapters are around an hour and a half, hour 45, 2 hours. So plan for that throughout the week. I think it's kid friendly. It depends on your kid and the age and your relationship with them. There is some gory rat stuff, and there is dog men, and there is big feet, and there's portals and moonshiners, and a murder mystery, a couple of them, and things like that. But there's that's about it. I don't know what rating you would give that. If it's they're going to smoke cigarettes, and I think there's a little cussing, but there's nothing too colorful. I've said worse on this show live, so there you go. But I think it's a nice little family thing you can get together. But the little ones, if they're scared of dog men, I might want to cover their ears. My mom used to take me to the theater to cover my eyes when something happened at the theater, and you try to peek through their fingers, but it would make you want to see it more. I think that's what kind of like censorship does, doesn't it? It's like, why don't they want me to see that? I want to see it now.
Especially like when a boob pops out or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I do remember that. I remember that was pretty funny. I know Billy Jack was one where she tried to cover my eyes. I was like 10. All right, so here's my last video of the night. Again, I apologize. They're dragging a little, but at least you get the gist of it. And we're going to try to work this out with StreamYard. They better get their stuff together because this is just awful. I like the way Chrome works better, but we'll see. I'll keep working throughout the week and we'll get it as good as we can. Okay, guys? So here we go. I think you're going to like this one. This is my favorite. Here we go. Yes, they really did that.
February 14, 1929, the year of the Black Bottom, 6-day bicycle races, flagpole sitting, and the first flight from Paris to New York. Mickey Mouse makes his screen debut, and Herbert Hoover is inaugurated as the 31st president with the words, "We in America today are nearer to the final triumph over poverty than ever before in any land." 6 months later, the New York stock market will crash and bring about the greatest depression in world history. In the city of Chicago, the time is 10:25 a.m. The temperature, 18 above zero.
George, is that you? Hello, boys. Something I can do for you?
Yeah, you can shut up. I'll line up, all of you. Face that wall.
You, over there.
Come on, move.
No way. You two.
All right, you two, let's go.
Listen, Buster. You better be kidding.
Move.
Cozy flat feet. Wait till you hear about this downtown. Move! Hey! You! You on the car! Let's go. Let's go.
Sir, I'm just a mechanic here.
Let's go.
All I do is work on the automobiles. I don't know what to do with these people. Come on.
Move!
Hands on the wall. Lean on it.
Well, there you go, guys. There's your haunted Chicago. There's your happy St. Valentine's Day and happy Halloween. Because as I did in that video, I believe they're all ghosts, from the pole sitters to the flappers who walked along the skyscraper's edge defying all dangers. That was the new thing, to the gangsters, the Native Americans who were just trying to hold on to the land and figure out what was happening at Fort Dearborn and had enough, and the Confederate soldiers mistreated at the Douglas Fort Douglas, and everything else. The people that burned in all those different tragedies in the Chicago fire, and Mrs. O'Leary's cow, I think, made it out of there the best. Mrs. O'Leary finally getting it official that she was not the cause of the fire, that it was probably one of the guys in the party next door that sat in the barn and all that hay and had a nice smoke, and a lot of people lost their homes and everything else. But I think it's cursed, Donnie. Serial killers, World's Fairs, you name it.
I think it's cursed, but I would still visit though.
Yeah, the Windy City. Now, did you know that the Windy City wasn't because of the wind? It's because of the hot air of the politicians and the criminals and the con men.
Really?
That's where it comes from. Yeah.
Because they are, I guess they're considered blowhards.
Full of hot air.
Yeah.
Yep. Full of hot air. So there you go, guys. There's your Chicago. I think we did it in time, Donnie.
There's one last thing, though, Cisco.
Go right ahead. You finish.
There's something that's going on with Chicago now to add even more fuel to the fire of it being cursed, and that's the Chicago Mothman. And a lot of people have been citing it. A lot of people. When I first Googled the Chicago Mothman, the first thing that showed up was an NPR article about it, like talking about how frequently it's been cited, and Vice did a news piece on it, and people are seeing it. And it's as recent as it started up in 2017, but people are still seeing it. And I think we are all familiar with the legend of the Mothman and, all the things that were associated with it. And,
right.
And
it's
happening right now.
Yeah, and it is. And not only that, but they are seeing, there's an awful lot of reports of the, if you remember the movie Predator, where it had that kind of like the Glimmer Man, had that kind of camouflage going on, and climbing trees. So that they're saying that it's almost like monkey-like, but much more scary. Lots of humanoids on buildings. If you remember the prophecy and how Christopher Walken sat on the side of the building with his wings wrapped around him, creepy stuff. Lots and lots of that. My theory is this: negativity is drawn to negativity. As long as you're going to have murder and blood-soaked ground, that this place has been blood-soaked from the slaughterhouses to everything else. I think they're feeding off of it, and not only feeding off of it, encouraging it. That's just my theory.
It goes back to Fort Dearborn.
Prove me wrong with science.
It goes back to Fort Dearborn. I think when they were eating those people's hearts, they were doing a ceremony to summon something really bad.
Sour soil, you're just not going to do anything with it. And you put that many people in, any place. We talked about it last night about, I can't get the paper off this cough drop, saved my life. But we talked about it last night. Anytime you have that, that huge amount of people and all those emotions and everything else in these big cities, of course it's going to just really magnify, everything else. But there are certain lands, I believe, that are cursed and sour soil, and Native Americans usually name them names that translate back to, you shouldn't live there. Yeah, before Dearborn even, Linda. And you shouldn't live there, and they think it's all cute and funny. But Steve and I have talked multiple times, as well as, Donnie, you have too, about these places that, the devil's playground, or the devil's, mountains, or, Satan's lair, or devil's den, or just all these different places the devil is in the name. But, if you go back to the Native American placements and things that they said, nobody should ever live on this ground, and they respected that. And then you start popping these cities on top of it and doing the things that they did. course it's going to escalate it. And that is a big lesson in energy. You know, I feel sorry for all those people. Um, you know, but I tell you, one of the great stories for me out of this whole thing is that Al Capone was haunted by Jimmy, who was in the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. Multiple people saw the ghost in multiple different places. Any jail cell he was in, from Penn State to Alcatraz and back to Florida. And Jimmy hung in there until he drove Al Capone crazy. And of course, you'll see it go down as syphilis. You're not going to see, you know, on his death certificate, cause of death, scared to death. But I wonder how many times that happens, and you know, we write it down as something else, because I do believe it happens. I do, and that's pretty scary for Halloween. There you go. Are you good, Donnie? Can we set the book the book on Chicago?
Yeah, I think so. Man, I wish there was like an app that could just show you where all the cursed lands are and you could just know where to avoid, you know?
Well,
Like some people.
we have those. They're called light workers and gatekeepers and light grounders, and they will tell you, I wouldn't go in that house, I wouldn't go on that land, I wouldn't, you know, I wouldn't live there if I were you. But nobody listens until it's too late, and then they call you back in to try to fix it. So if you're wondering what I'm doing right now, I'm trying to grab a little vid, just trying to lift the mood a little bit. I thought that I really put a lot of time into that St. Valentine's Day Massacre one. I really, I don't want to say I like the story, but I have been studying it since high school, and you know, it goes a little bit deeper and a little bit more. And yes, to answer your question, there are two rumors of what happened to Highball the dog. One is out there that's the most popular, that said that he was so distraught by what he had been through that they had to put him down. And another one is that picture I showed you of him standing there with the police officer. The police officer actually took him home, and he lived out his life being loved. So with, you know, if we're going to leave Chicago with a story, there's a happy one, because I know you guys were worried about the dog as much as I was, and that one I
No,
don't
you know what Chicago's happiest story is, Cisco? I'll tell you.
What is it?
Michael Jordan.
I don't know anything about it.
Michael Jordan. They have all these curses, but the one blessing they did get was Michael Jordan.
Okay. I like Highball better, but that's okay. Let me see if I can find this for you guys. Here we go. Here we go.
I definitely know the Mothman is a harbinger of something. I just don't know exactly
Well,
what that is.
it's
but
drawn to
definitely
negativity
something.
or something that's going to happen, but something happens in Chicago every night. Ask the people who
And
live
you gotta
there.
consider like the murder rate nowadays in Chicago. It's getting pretty
Beyond
bad
off
there.
the friggin' charts, man. Thank you very much, Worldwide Ghost. I appreciate that. I hope you guys did. I apologize for the lag. There's nothing I can do about that. My broadcast, everything here is off the chain. It's
Google's
Firefox,
fault.
and and there's a lag. I sat with people all day today trying to get it fixed. But here we go. Here's a nice little short one. As per usual, we always offer up ideas for snacks. We've shared some pictures for Halloween snacks and some tradition ideas and things like that. And I'm going to get back on the horse and start with this one. This one was my favorite. It's popcorn with love, and I think you know what I'm talking about. Don't tell me we don't think of everything here on this show. Caramel bacon popcorn. I remember when we played last year. We played the cabin. We were offering up different things. Tomorrow night I will share the recipe of Mrs. McGee's apple pie moonshine. I probably won't be partaking in it, but I'll have the non-alcoholic version, and both of those will be available. I'll put the recipe for that in the description, because tonight we're going to start what, Donnie? Will I go look for it?
Cabin
What did you
22.
think about the cabin? What did you think about it when you heard it? Why don't you give it an introduction? We're going to start it tonight.
Well, for me, the most fascinating thing about Cabin 22 was knowing like your process in making it, because when I found out how you went about making it, I was like, I've never heard of any other person ever doing that before. Never.
As far as it's weird.
Because I don't know, do you want to explain like kind of how you did it real quick? Like
Right, I'm gonna have to stop this real quick because it's gonna play automatically. Hold 1 second. Okay. Okay, so this is the deal. Steve was doing 31 Days of Halloween. It's a couple years ago. And he was having a really hard time coming up with 31 nights of something that was entertaining. And he was not feeling well. And his birthday is in Halloween. So I thought, heck, I think I could write a Halloween story, a real quick little ghost story, record it, surprise him, write it, record it, narrate it, do voices and a couple of fun like jump scares and maybe some sounds. And I think I even put like, goblin laughs and ho, ho, ho in the beginning and welcome, and did all that crazy cheesy stuff that's just so cool. And I did it all and I sent it to him. And I said, here's a night off. You can play this. And he played it. He loved it. Everybody else loved it. He said, man, that's some characters. I'd like, to hear more of that story. So he and I thought that was very funny. And he gets on the phone feeling froggy one day and says, Cisco, you should sit down and write like a novelette, like a longer story. And I want you to put in, here's the challenge. Have everything in that story that has something to do with Halloween, like everything from candy corn to bats to witches to cryptids to, everything that you could think of that you can fit in there, but still make it make sense. I said, well, that'll be fun. And I went about it kind of with a Scooby-Doo feel to it, when I started out. And I started with the dog. And as soon as I came up with a dog who is loosely, kind of tightly based on a dog I had for 17 years named Oso Perro, who could do many of the things that Rage does in this story. Wonderful, wonderful, another wonderful furry forever friend. And it just went from that. So I sat down and I would start to write it. And the characters speak to me, and it basically just wrote itself. I would write one and I would release it. Like that was in my homage to Charles Dickens, who wrote serial novellas. He would release them, and then a couple days later another, and a couple days another, the next chapter, till he was done. That's what we started doing. It was supposed to be a couple of short chapters. It wound up being 14 and a half hours of narrated material that these voices, the characters, and everything kind of came from around me. And there would be times I would write as much as 2-3 pages and have no idea where it came from. That's what Donnie's talking about. That's the short version.
It was like you went up in front of the mic and basically like freeballed the characters. You just like role played the characters, and you were just, and you said like most of the time you didn't even know, you didn't have like any concrete plan. You just kind of improvise, and the character just comes out. And I'm listening to this, and I'm like, what? She's just freeballing this? Because I was convinced that you had written it out.
Pieces and parts. I have like little line here or there, and then it would just basically, I sat and thought, if these characters in a room, because of their character, because of their mindset and their past and what they believed in or disbelieved in, how would they react? And it all came out so natural, and it really became something almost loosely a nod. There's so many nods in here. Like I said, the nod of the gold pocket watch was to the house that would not die, and the gold pocket watch they found in the cellar. Different people I know, different sayings, little things that meant something. The sheriff, I know a couple of people like that. So the sheriff is kind of a combo of three people that actually exist. And most of the things that are paranormal or supernatural in this story actually happened to me or someone I know or happened to somebody I was with and saw it happen. Some of the craziest things, some of which I have permission to talk about, that's Brian Bowden and his encounter with the dog man. And it's loosely based, Jeb's encounter is loosely based on a Brian Bowden, but it didn't quite end the same way as it did for Brian Bowden. So there you go. We're going to start it tonight. This is the prequel. This is the original story that spun the entire little haunted novella, and I hope you guys enjoy it. If you've heard it before, I hope you'll listen again. If it's your first time, I really hope you enjoy it. It's with my whole heart. I wish you happy Halloween, but the main thing is to understand this story because we're all in this story. What we're going through now is very much what this story is about, and having personal abilities or having personal thoughts or knowing something was always one way, and coming to the realization that you're not the only one that feels that way, and then all those people coming together in light and love and understanding, and each being their own individual but working towards one thing that meant more than the whole of the people. And it's a crazy story about how your character gets broken down and why you might become a criminal or a murderer or something like that, and also why you don't, and you come through things that change you and make you stronger in a different way. So there we go. Love you, Ted. Love you all. Thanks for hanging in. It's been crazy. It's been absolutely crazy, but I hope you'll enjoy this. We've been looking forward to this, and we're doing it, Donnie. We're getting her done, man. Look at us hanging on for the ride. It's been a crazy roller coaster past couple weeks. I'm telling you. Here we go.
The Cabin. On a fall day in 2001, I thought it a wonderful idea to rent one of those log cabins out on Montesano Mountain in Alabama. It would be perfect and reasonably priced for a long week with my two sons. Most all had windows offering a stunning view, and a tree-covered mountain valley and its colored quilt of leaves would be a breathtaking sight. The porches off the back of the cabins had barbecue grills, and the thought of grilling burgers and watching the sun slip behind the hills would be lovely. The decision was made for long walks on the trails and time together, and the day arrived to much excitement, and we entered the cabin. Number 22. There was a small kitchen and 2 bedrooms were off the spacious living room. The boys tossed their sleeping bags on the cots and ran back outside and explored the area. We enjoyed the trails and had our first barbecue and settled in exhausted for our first night. I could hear off in the distance an approaching storm was announcing its arrival. I got up to check the door and look outside the huge picture window at the scene of the lightning just starting to streak the sky. It was beautiful. I went back to bed and laid awake as the claps of thunder exploded in the distance and bursts of lightning lit up the bedroom. Soon I drifted off to sleep. And then I remember a terrible nightmare, so vivid that I swore I was awake, and it took the very breath from me. I was in the same bed, my heart was pounding against my chest, and I was drenched in sweat. I was pinned to the bed by an invisible force, and I could see the empty room with each flash of lightning. yet I could not move. Not my hands, not my feet, not my head, just my eyes. And I scanned around the room to look for this invisible force that was holding me down. Or was it just fear? Flash! The lightning lit up the room, and I knew instinctively I was not alone. As if to echo the thought, thunk! A wet thud at the foot of the bed trapped my heart in its grip as I stayed there, helpless. Thunk! This time I almost felt the bang at the foot of the bed vibrating on the floor. It sounded huge and somehow wet is the only way that I can describe it. The thought that this was a dream went through my head, and I remember saying to myself, wake up, wake up, wake up. But I was still there, trapped in that bed. I squeezed my eyes closed and I said a prayer over and over and over in my head. Thump! An invisible something punched the bottom of the bed, right between my feet. My eyes flashed open and nothing was there. Thump! A wet, dragging sound that seemed to move away, and I stretched my vision as far as I could see. What was making this noise? Oh, just wake up already, I said to myself, and what I hoped was an empty room. In the lightning's flash, I saw something in the corner, by the door, huge and black, almost like a shapeless glue, gooey blob. It slithered out the door and took a turn towards my son's room. Flash! The lightning went off, and I saw that it was gone. I heard a thud, but it was further away, and in the dream, it ended. I woke up, startled into new surroundings, and the sun was just coming through the window. I quickly sat up. I was soaked with sweat, surveyed around the room to get my bearings. Wiped my hand over my head. It was just a dream. I leaned forward toward the end of the bed, just looking for anything that might be out of place there. Nothing. You're losing it, girl, I told myself. That was a humdinger of a dream. I shook it off, and I got up and quick ran and checked on the boys who were asleep. One had fallen asleep with the flashlight on, and I clicked it off, and I pulled the sleeping bag up around him. I quick got dressed, and I made some coffee and a little breakfast. When the boys got up, the bustle started. Talk about the wicked storm floated over the smell of pancakes and bacon. Smiling, I asked them if they were ready to take on the blue trail, the one that goes down and round the side of the mountain today. The trails all had color names, and Big Blue, as they called it, was a favorite. I guess, said my little one, I didn't get much sleep. An odd feeling hit me when he said this, and I clutched my coffee cup a little harder. Oh, I answered. Why is that? I was up all night. Something was in my room, and nobody would wake up or answer me when I yelled. I didn't hear you. Mom, I screamed loud. I swear I saw it with my flashlight. Something big and black, like a huge garbage bag filled with goo. Oh, you're just dreaming, you goof, said my older son as he kind of punched him in the arm. Well, it was loud, and it hit my bed, and it banged on the floor, and it smelled bad, too. For reasons only boys know, they both laughed at this. I was nowhere near laughter. My head spun with the realization my dream was a living nightmare, but I didn't want to scare them. I held it together, and I told them I was going to see if Mr. McGee, the cabin manager, and I was going to ask him if he had a larger cabin. And the stove wasn't working that good, so pack up your stuff, and we'll go see him before we hit the trails. They finished with a chorus of, "Oh, Mom," with mouths full of pancakes. I tried my best to shudder from the inside out, as I can continuously scanned the room over my coffee cup. Down at the big log cabin manager's office, I left the boys out front in the car. They were punching each other and laughing, which was a normal I was okay with right now. "Hey, Mrs. Harper, how's the stay?" Came a voice from behind the big bear statue that was carved with a chainsaw by no other than the owner of this voice. "Hey, Mr. McGee. It's okay." I tried to start off positive. "The view is lovely." He smiled as he came from behind the counter and the bear. "I ordered it just for you," he joked. I laughed a little and asked him if we could move to another cabin. "Why, sure. I have one further down the path. That be okay?" "Yes, I will take it," and handed him the key. "Is there anything wrong with this one?" as he reached out and took the key from my hand. "No, not really. It is lovely. Just some banging and sounds all night." "Oh, well, must be some raccoons up in the roof space. I'll have to take a look into that. Been a while since I rented that one. I had a long boarder there for, stayed almost a year. Old Bob. Poor guy loved to fish down at the lake. One day, poor guy, he lost his footing and fell in. Hit his head on one of those rocks and drowned. Awful thing. About a month or so back. Took them a while to find him, too. When they pulled him out, he was darn near all black with that river moss." My eyes widened as he handed me the key. "Will you be staying long?"
Well, there you go. Let's tell a story, shall we? That's the beginning. That's the prequel. And yes, some of that happened. And yes, those cabins are there. And yes, the mountain is there. And many things that are mentioned in this story throughout is absolutely exist. I might have moved them around and moved a little closer up the mountain, but the RV park is there. The Dead Children's Playground is there. All of these things. And that was the first installment. That's the one that was a Steve's gift, because when she hands that key, he puts that key in her hand, and she realizes that the person who stayed in the cabin before her lived there a year and died in the lake and was covered in this black, smelly kind of I called it lake moss, but it's something else. But it's a goo, and that kind of reminds me a lot of the creature from the Black Lagoon. And I can just remember him coming out of that Black Lagoon all covered with the rotted seaweed and stuff. So Bob was more than likely at that point in time. Joan is thinking she did see a ghost, and it was probably this guy who lived in the cabin. But we don't really say it was or it wasn't. At this point, you don't know. You just know that Mr. McGee is kind of blowing it off and gave her a new cabin, and they went off to the new cabin and finished out their weekend. But what happens next is a roller coaster of events, is it not, Donnie?
Man, it's a pretty epic. Like they should make I thought they should make a TV movie out of it, or like a
Like a
TV show or
miniseries.
series or something.
That's what Steve wants to do. He really wants to. He wants to
Because
do the
it's that
screenplay on it.
good. It's that good.
Thank you, man. And Steve is wants to work on the screenplay and get it out there as a TV miniseries. And I can actually see the characters walking around, and and the way they were and the way they carried themselves and their characteristics and, their little ticks and everything. I could just see them. But so there you go. And now we are almost ready to do, if I can find it. Pardon me. And yes, Be Kind, you were probably hit with the same thing. Everybody put your salt out and your sage and your Palo Santo and your Florida water and all your stuff. I've got mirrored prayers all over the place. Like I said, it hit Steve too at the same time it hit me. So whatever it was, we give it no authority here, that's for sure. And it can just go right on back tenfold, and so mote it be. There that is. So here we go. Part 1 of Cabin 22. I hope you guys enjoy. Thanks for sticking around. And like I said, if you want to show this and listen with your kids or in the car or whatever you're doing, maybe you're going on a trunk or treat or something like that, this is great for that. Or just curl up and listen to it, with a furry friend or whatever, and a hot cup of cocoa or whatever, hot cup of whatever, because I think you're going to enjoy it. And it gets better as it goes through. And good night, Big Cole. Thank you again, darling. Good night to everybody who has to go. This will be here for you if you want to listen to it. If not, it's on a playlist on this channel. Let's go down, and they're all in order, and you can listen to them that way so you don't miss out. But here we go.
I'm going to log out because I'm getting pretty hungry. I didn't have dinner yet, but
Okay.
I'll be in the chat.
You'll be listening? All right.
I'll be listening, and I'll be in the chat, and yeah, and I'll be eating. So
Okay, cool. Thanks, Donnie, for hanging in. Great job on Chicago.
yeah, it was fun
This one
tonight.
is about yeah. Oh, I'm so glad you enjoyed it, sweetie. Thanks for hanging in with all the problems and tech stuff too. This runs about 45 minutes, and then we'll be done, and I'll close everybody out. We'll see you tomorrow night at 8:00 Eastern for chapter 2. Okay. Good night, Donnie. Thanks for coming.
All right. Good night.
The Strange Case of Cabin 22. Dave took the turns on the mountain road slow. He just passed a sign that read, "Beware of falling rock." What did that even mean? What are you supposed to do if rocks start falling out of the sky while you're driving? That would be just about right to finish off this week. He said out loud to nothing, and he finished the thought in his head. Man crushed by rock. Misses divorce hearing. Widow gets dog. As far as Dave was concerned, his buddy Rage, a large black shepherd, was his most valuable possession. He reached up and adjusted the rearview mirror to look into the back seat at his sleeping friend, and spoke out loud again. "No worries. She can have the house, but she's not getting you. We're almost there, buddy." And Rage seemed to react to this in a positive way, and sat up, tongue gleefully hanging out of the side of his mouth, wide awake and alert to his friend's voice. Dave Weaver was joining the ranks of the unaffected husband, soon to be bachelor squad. Odd how you can grow so apart from a spouse that the space between you grows past the point of caring and does a deadfall into just make it over territory. This 2-week trip proved to be a lifesaver into this mountain majesty of Montesano Mountain's beauty and solitude was just what he needed. He had rented a cabin there, and Mr. McGee, the owner of the property, said there was good fishing, even late into the fall, and the scenery was a healing in a way. And added this southern beauty, "You just come on up and leave your troubles and ex-wife down in the valley. Bless her heart." Ex-wife. He thought out loud. Gotta get used to that one, Rage. Rage, reacting again to his comment, moved into the passenger seat and stuck his head out of the window. Dave patted him on the back and thought to himself, he filled that position just fine. They made their way up the winding road and toward the cabins. Dave found the turnoff sign that said Montesano Lodge and Cabins. A little way up the road, he passed a sign to his left that said, to RV Park, turn here. And remember, he was told to pass that one. On up the road a piece, you'll see the sign for the cabins. And he did. He could see the clearing and the large building up ahead and pulled up to the manager's office. A large cabin lodge with a sign that hung on one side of what looked like a little general store. It swung from the green metal roof and declared, fresh biscuits every morning. It actually had apostrophes in the place of the E in every and the G in morning. He was getting used to this southern charm and loved that it was freely offered in conversation unapologetically. And in his state of mind leaving the city rush of New York, he just loved it. He had taken a new job in Huntsville and had a month to shake off his past and start new. He pulled up to the other end of the beautifully built lodge. The pecan-colored logs with gray-looking cement between each one looked like it was built by the hands of Paul Bunyan himself, and he laughed at that thought. Guess I have to brush up on my southern legends, boy. He smiled and ruffed the fur of the dog's head. Stay here. I will be just a minute. He walked up to the door that was bookended by a 6-foot Indian chief carved out of a log, offering him a red and white peppermint candy with one outstretched hand. Odd combo, he thought. On the other side, a totem pole, just as high, with 4 faces carved into the wood, one each more grotesque than the other. Nice work, he said to it out loud and gave it a nod as he walked through the door to the office. A little bell above tinged at the opening and closing of the door. The theme continued in here with a huge carving of a bear in a quaint lobby with a picture of Indians on its endless ride into a battle long over. Another on the side wall covered a cozy-looking teepee by a lake with a glow from inside that seemed so nice right about now, and a large oil painting of an Indian chief over a brown leather couch. He saw no one behind the counter and called out, Mr. McGee? He heard a rustle from the wall behind the big bear. Mrs., you must be Mr. Weaver from the big city. An older woman emerged into the view, and Dave smiled. Guilty, he joked. She was one of the most comfortably put together people he had ever seen. She wore a dress of blue with a white flower print, short curly gray hair, and naturally pink cheeks under the bluest eyes framed by little gold-rimmed glasses. She transferred her knitting into one hand and extended the other toward him, and he shook it. I'm Mrs. McGee. Mr. McGee is out back putting the finishing touches on my eagle. Your eagle? He asked as he smiled. He just loved her demeanor. Oh, yes. He's always carving with that noisemaker of his. I bet him one of my strawberry rhubarb pies he couldn't make me an eagle. Dave laughed at this a bit. He's starting to understand. Looks like I'm going to be doing some extra baking. It's coming along right good. They both chuckled at this. Well, you don't need to stand here jawing your day away with me. You'll be wanting your key and getting to the fishing. You got your dog with you. Mr. McGee says you got a buddy with you. Startled a bit at this, he thought it was okay and said, Yes, Rage. He's in the car. That okay? He had hoped. Oh, sure. She waved a hand in a forget-about-it gesture. We love pets. You catch up after him, and don't let him bother the other guests or chase my cat Fritz there, and we won't have no problems." She gestured toward a tall bookcase where a large, beautiful black Persian cat laid on the very top of it. It was staring right at him with green eyes. It flitted its tail as if to say to Dave, "That's right, don't start none, won't be none." And Dave laughed. "He is very well behaved, ma'am." "Good. Glad to hear it. Plenty of wide open space for him to run round here. You both will enjoy your stay. 2 weeks, is it?" Yes, ma'am. 2 weeks. Gonna relax, do some reading, and of course some fishing." "Well, good place for it. There's fresh bait every day in the vending machine. Worms, mostly." "The vending machine?" he asked, never hearing of such a thing. "A worm machine?" And just smiled. "Yup, Mr. McGee sells chicken livers in the storefront cooler, but I'm not letting those worms in my shop. Machine's round back, takes quarters, or you can dig your own." He did chuckle out loud at this, as she pushed an index card and a pen toward him, and turned around to a board with gold hooks and keys hanging from it. "Just put your address, phone, license plate number, and the dates you're staying on the card. Of course, your name, too. I'll be needing your driver's license as well. Keep it legal-like." "You're all paid up," Mr. McGee said. He shook his head at the simple check-in and thought he could get used to this trusting thing. How quaint it all was, and started to fill out the card. "There's a small fridge in the cabin and some sundries in the shop. I try to keep hot dogs and fresh hamburger meat, and there are always fresh pies and biscuits and sausage in the mornings if you have the need. My canned goods, too. If you go hungry round here, it'll be your own fault, Mr. Weaver." You can call me Dave." He smiled. "And you can call me Mrs. McGee." She smiled and placed the key on the card, and he had just finished. The key read number 22, faded gold print. "It is down the path to the right. You won't have a problem finding it. Shop closes at 10 p.m. sharp, but if you find the need, Mr. McGee is usually up at his fire pit out back. If you see the smoke, he's there, and he can get what you need, but don't make it a habit." She smiled. Ding! A sound went off behind her from an unseen room. "There's my pies, fresh apple and pecan today, Mr. Dave." He took a deep breath in. He could smell the apple pie, and it warmed his heart. Funny how smells could do that. Ting, ting! A different bell behind him. The doorbell, so to speak. A large man in overalls and faded red t-shirt darkened the door with his sighs. "I finished that sink faucet, Mrs. McGee." "Well, thank you, Tater," she smiled. "There's a loose board on the front porch of 11 and a bad hinge on the screen door of number 3, if you'd be so kind." "Sure thing," he offered as she took down the keys to those cabin numbers. Tater. Oh, these names, Dave thought. Almost shuffled, head down, as he put one key down on the counter that had a 22 on it, and picked up the other 2 keys. "Right on it, Mrs. Elm." And he shuffled out as slowly as he came in, never even looking at Dave, leaving the tinging bell behind him. "Whoa, he's a big guy," Dave said almost without realizing it. "Oh, yes. Tater's heart is as big as he is. Tater Daniels. He's our caretaker. Lives out in the cabin behind the lodge. Known him and his family, for years." She offered and then swatted a hand in his direction. "But you don't need to bother with all that. You need to get on to your fishing, and I need to get to my pies." He thanked her and tinged the bell on his exit. Oh, Dave." He stopped at her voice and turned around. You're not one of those jittery city people, are you? He had no idea what she meant, and his face probably said so, because she finished with this. I mean, the woods out here. They have some scary sounds you may not be used to. Things go bump in the night around here. She laughed at this a bit, like it was a joke, and he smiled. Don't you get caught up in all that gossip either. Ain't nothing in my cabins or these woods that God himself didn't put here. You'd be wise to remember that, Dave. This seemed odd to him, but he thanked her and gave her a little wave and a nod as he went out the door. Without even thinking, he took a peppermint from the Indian's outstretched hand and said thanks to the statue. Getting in the car, he was greeted by Rage, who amused himself at his absence by watching a taunting squirrel in a nearby tree. "Hey, boy," he said, getting in, and chuckled at the thought of Rage having some fun here, too, chasing squirrels and rabbits on the trails he had read about, and pet the dog as he moved back over to the passenger side. "You get to have all the fun you want, I'm told. Just leave that cat in there alone. That one looks like trouble." He laughed as he unwrapped the peppermint. His waiting friend started to actually drool a bit, watching him. Rage loved candy, of all kinds, and he palmed the mint and offered it to his friend. "Here you go, boy. We're on vacation. All diets are off." Rage ate it with 2 crunches, and they drove down the dirt road toward the cabins. Dave parked to the side of the little cabin, set far off the road. It almost looked like it hung on a cliffside of the mountain. The scene was breathtaking. There was a little roofed porch with a pile of firewood on one side, and yes, a rocking chair too. Log handmade railings surrounded the porch, and a screen door in faded green paint, a gold number 22 at its right. A lantern hung on a black wrought iron hook above it. Kerosene, he thought, and marveled at the cabin's simple elegance. "Let's go in and see, boy," he said to Rage as they both got out of the car. Rage ran right up to the tree in the very front of the yard and took a long pee on it. "Well, it's official," Dave said. "It's ours now." And he laughed. He took the key out of his jeans pocket and walked up to the screen door, opened it, and inserted the key into the old lock on the door. It stuck a bit, and he quick pulled back his hand from the knob. Had it just turned in his hand? Don't be silly, he thought, as he reached for it again, jiggled the key, and it gave way. He opened the front door to the huge room. "Come on, boy." Rage ran past him into the room and started sniffing everything in his sight. There was a large brown leather sofa, complete with knitted afghan he was sure was handmade by Mrs. McGee. A huge fireplace with an iron hook inside for heating up pot full of stew, he surmised. There was 2 small rooms to his right, bedrooms he guessed, and the bathroom, called a half bath by Mr. McGee on the phone call they had had. "Showers are down by the lodge. 4 stalls in there, hot as water on the mountain. Open all night if you choose, but there's a commode in the cabin, running water, gas stove in the kitchen, but no electric. Kerosene lanterns are provided, and a barbecue on the back porch runs on propane. There's a small fridge I run on a gas generator out back. I'll turn that on and get her cold for you before you stay." All that was just fine with Dave, and 0 phone service out here was okay with him too. He had talked enough with lawyers and his soon-to-be ex for a while, and remembered there's a landline in the office if need arises. also part of his conversation with the soft-spoken owner of this gorgeous property. The picture window in the back of the cabin overtook his vision. The view was breathtaking, and he started toward it to get a better look. He walked right into an invisible cloud of stench. The smell that overtook his nostrils was overwhelming. It was a thick smell of death and decay, mixed with a wet, mucky odor. "Whoa," he said as he reached back behind him to reopen the door and get some air in there. "Oh, must have been closed up for a while," he said to Rage as the dog emerged from a back room and sat down by the fireplace. "You see a dead squirrel in there? Oh, man, that's bad." He moved toward the window, holding his nose, and looked to see which one opened. He found two smaller ones on the sides of the big picture window that did just that. He dropped his gym bag and he threw them open to their screens. A lovely mountain's fresh air poured in, and he took a deep breath. "Gonna be a bit to get that stench out," he said to Rage, who was now on the couch, seeming to pick out his favorite spots in their new digs. Dave leaned on the windowsill to breathe in again. As he did, he looked into the tiny kitchen with its small gas stove and tiny fridge on the counter, running as promised. The cabinets matched the wood grain paneling throughout the cabin's decor. There were many of them compared to the size of the kitchen, and every one of them had its doors wide open. The provided pots and pans spilled out onto the floor, and there were plastic cups on the counter and silverware spread all over its surface, and the matching drawers hung open and yawned out dish towels like tongues from wooden mouths. Some welcome, Dave thought, and he remembered the key Tater turned in at the office. It said 22. Man, he had just left here. And he fixed the sink faucet, he said. Why would he leave it like this? He questioned out loud to Rage, that was now in one chair in the room and looking out the window. Some view, huh, buddy? And this made Dave smile. He quick picked up the pans and threw them into the cabinets and swished the cups and eating utensils into the small sink with his arm. "I'll be washing those," he said, and finished closing the drawers and cabinets, opened the fridge, and stuck his hand in it. And it was cold. "All good there," he mused. "Hey, boy, you hungry?" He called to the dog, still looking out the window. The mountain's trees were filled with fall's colors, and Rage would love this, he thought, as much as he would. The last bit of work ahead was to unload the truck. He thought now about the few groceries he had quickly grabbed before the ride up. Rage's favorite canned food, one of the 5 cases now filling the back of his SUV. The other 4 cases were Boston Lager, and he planned on drinking every single one of them. "Come on, boy. Let's go get some air. Stay close. We will go run later." With the moves of a dog that understood every word Dave said, and there really was no proof that he didn't really, Rage jumped down and headed toward the door, and they both headed to unload the truck. Staring at the contents of the truck, Dave was actually winding down a bit, he felt, and thought he'd not rush this. He was on vacation, after all. The things he packed were minimal. All of his real belongings in a storage unit closer to his new job down in Huntsville. What he had here was Dave's vacation gear. 2 fishing poles, a tackle box, a pair of heavy boots, a down coat, his gym bag with a few jeans, t-shirts, a flannel shirt or 2, several pairs of those boxers his ex-wife, hated, and shaving and other toiletries. He touched his face and thought, hell, I may not even shave for a while. What you think, boy? He looked at Rage, who was laying on the dirt drive, chewing on a pine cone between his paws. "Oh, man, don't eat that." He reached down. "Give it here, boy." And Rage stood up and seemed to look past him. A slight growl came from his throat. Dave quick slipped a hand under his collar instinctively and looked in the direction that had Rage's focus. "What do you see, boy?" And Dave caught a glimpse of a large black mist floating just above the ground, coming from behind the cabin and moving into the tree line. He stretched to see it as it faded into the deeper thickness of the woods and out of sight. "What the hell?" Rage just growled, a longer disapproving thought all his own in response. "I know, buddy, right? I don't like it either. Smoke from a barbecue, maybe? A swarm of flies?" Dave had no idea, really, and said so. "I don't know, but we'll stay away from it, okay, buddy?" Rage's tail wagged a bit now, and he let go the collar as he said, "Let's eat." He turned to the truck now to decide what to bring in. The bag of steaks, canned beans, and coffee he brought. For sure, the case of Royal Canin beef for shepherds. Stuff costs more than the steaks, he thought, and smiled. And a case of beer. "Come on, boy, let's fire up that grill." Rage trotted off toward the front door, and Dave gave a glancing look toward the tree line, and it gave him an uneasy feeling. He wasn't one to jump to conclusions, but he was up here all alone, really, and just then he was glad he had brought that 12-gauge, and he was even happier right now about the beer. The steak smelled great, a damn sight better than it did in the cabin for sure. The beer was warm, but he put some to chill in the fridge, and it was just fine for now. Rage ate his canned beef without chewing it, it seemed, and he knew what he had set his sights on was that T-bone he was promised on the road on the way up. It never ceased to amaze him how damn smart this dog was. Dave smiled as he flipped one of the steaks over and asked his buddy, "How would you like your steak, sir? Medium? Medium rare?" Dave smiled at the look on Rage's face when he turned it up to look at him. His ears perked up, and his eyes seemed to sparkle. "Ha! Rare it is, monsieur." He laughed at this. He was feeling better, and you can best bet he bought Rage a T-bone. Bought several of them. This dog and this move was saving his life, he felt. And I'd rather have the money go to what he wanted for a change. His wife was getting plenty. She had seemed to go batshit crazy after speaking to that ambulance-chasing lawyer of hers, and he was hurt, really. "You want anything else, buddy? A Porsche, maybe?" Rage just tossed his head to one side, as if to say, "Can I?" Dave chuckled and finished off the beer, and leaned it against the railing that rounded the whole back porch. "One down," he said, and reached out to open the screen door. A large thud seemed to come from inside the cabin, and Dave threw open the door, and they both ran in, thinking the darn roof fell in. What the? Dave stood with his hand on his forehead, looking around the large room. Nothing, he thought. Nothing? He checked the other rooms. The simple cots and old dressers in each room were all intact. Not a thing out of place. And he went to the front porch and looked all around. That sounded like an elephant came through the roof, buddy. But Rage hadn't followed him outside, and he quick ran up the walk and into the cabin to make sure all was okay. "Rage!" he called out, and he heard his bark from one of the back rooms. He ran in that direction, and Rage was there, about 3 feet from the back corner of the room, his hair standing up on the back of his neck, leaning forward in a growl mixed with barks, meaning he didn't like what he was seeing. "Rage? What's there?" As if the dog could explain, Rage just kept on with his protest as he backed up between that corner and Dave. In a lower voice now, "What's there, boy? What do you see?" As if to signal it was gone, Rage just sat down at his feet and started to pant, his tongue leaning out one side, saying, whatever it was gone. "What the hell, man?" Dave said aloud as he walked toward the corner and touched the wall. He didn't know what to expect, but he did it anyway. It was ice cold. Oh, Dave shook this off. Just an eerie, chilling, goosebump-raising feeling went through his body all at once, and he quick pulled his hand away. Come on, boy. That's enough of that. Steak! He said the last with a guttural humor, like a primal man speak, for red meat eaters. Rage understood, and off they went. Dave paused just a second before returning to the barbecue on the porch, grabbed a colder beer from the fridge, and realized the smell. It was completely gone. 4 beers later, and full stomachs to boot, the pair enjoyed the descending sun beyond the waterfall of trees in the distance. Rage chewing on what was left of his bone, and Dave halfway through a chapter of one of his new books. He had grabbed several at the Target when he bought the steaks. This one on a whim that seemed to fit his mood. The Subtle Art of Not Giving a F by Mark Manson. He had laughed when he saw the title and grabbed it with his usual thriller crime novels. It was turning out to be a self-help, life coaching thing, and not too bad. But he thought he'd finish the night with Grisham's The Whistler. He had heard a rustling off the porch, somewhere in the deep leaves below, and he took his feet down off the railing and looked down. He saw a deer jumping through off to the wood and thought it had been a long time since he had seen one. He was never into hunting. Fishing was as far as it went for Dave, and he and Rage watched it as it disappeared into the deep woods. It was almost dizzying to look down off the porch. It had been built to jut off the edge of the rock on the mountain for a full effect of the scenery there, and it worked for sure. But looking down, it made Dave think twice on trusting that railing, and he backed up off it quick and shuddered at the thought of taking an unwanted dive off of it. Okay, boy, I'm getting the rest of my stuff out of the truck. You want to pee? He went into the cabin, and Dave thought for a second, reached into his gym bag and got out a long black leash, and Rage just gave him a look. I know, buddy, but if you start running after a deer out here, I won't find you in the dark. And he clipped it on Rage's collar, and off they went. He grabbed the shotgun he had wrapped in a sleeping bag and threw another canvas bag over his shoulder. He had got him an old coffee kettle to use on the stove, and he drank it black, so that's all the morning start he needed. Rage's favorite water bowl was in there, with a couple of flashlights, batteries, and his old transistor radio. Some snacks and other stuff he grabbed. Okay, boy, the other stuff can wait till morning. And he locked the truck. Walking up to the cabin, he heard a scream. A loud, blood-curdling one. Rage heard it too. It sounded like it came from down the path toward the number 20 and number 19 cabin spots. Again it came, now sounding like it was further up the path, toward the number 24 and 25 spots. What in the world is happening around here? He said to the air. He had heard some birds out here can sound like someone screaming. Red foxes, too. Man, it had to be to move like that, he thought. Eerie, just the same. Sure sounded like a scream, he said to Rage. As they reached the porch, he heard it again, behind them now. They both hurried in the door and locked it. He leaned against the door for a moment. What in the hell was that? He dropped the bag and unrolled the 12-gauge on the counter, located the box of shells from his gym bag, and loaded it. While doing so, he remembered Mrs. McGee's words. The woods out here have some scary sounds you may not be used to. Things go bump in the night around here. I guess so. Gonna be a hell of a night, boy, Dave said, and Rage looked up. It's okay, though. We have Dad's old Betty and each other. What could get us here? All three of them settled onto the couch, Dave, Rage, and the 12 gauge. After making a roaring fire, and still very full from the steaks they had, they enjoyed sharing the pork rinds anyway. The new Grisham novel in hand, all seemed to feel a little bit better now. The warm fire and the crackling fireplace just felt right. The couch was comfy, and Rage was full and happy, and satisfied with taking one for every 2 pork rinds that Dave ate. And neither one of them noticed the face staring at them from the window off the back porch. You have been listening to The Strange Case of Captain 22. Stay tuned for part 2. Will Dave and Rage finally realize there is a strange face peering at them from the back porch? A porch that hangs a feet above the side of a mountain. Will the odd events continue in the little cozy hideaway? What will Dave find out about the odd occurrences in the little cabin village he has booked his stay in? Were the screams he and Rage heard just a fox, or is there more going on under the fall canopy of these woods? Tune in and find out. Welcome to Journey Through the Gate, your paranormal portal podcast, as we delve into the many questions and wonders brought on by the supernatural experience. What's on the other side of the gate? Let's find out.
Well, there you go, folks. I'm kind of half here and half there. I got skulls popping up behind me. Look at so many weird things happening. There's some right there. So there you go. We pulled it off, Mr. Donny Cho. I thank you very much. I'm glad you got your beefaroni. That was the prequel and part 1. Tomorrow night is part 2 at 8 o'clock, and it goes on all the way through Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. We will finish it up with the lovely Lynn Monet, who is hearing it for the first time, I believe, and Donny Cho and I. And then we will join Steve and Sandy, and everybody wants to join us for the Halloween festivities. But we're going to listen to this. It's about 8 o'clock. It'll run through that, so like I said, it's about a half hour, 45 minutes each night until you get toward the end. And then it goes up to 2 hours and we'll finish the story. Thank you so much for listening. If you're listening again, thank you twice. And I hope you guys have enjoyed meeting Mrs. McGee, Mr. McGee. We've met Joan and her boys. You'll see them maybe later. We've met Tater Daniels, and of course Dave and Wonderful Rage. There's lots of other characters coming, and oh, beefaroni sucks, ravioli, okay. And I don't know how you eat that shit, Donnie. So especially you lived in New Jersey, so I mean, lots of people have fights over gravy, Oof. So anyway, I don't believe there is. And how is he still on the can? Is he still on the can, Donnie? How is he still on the can? I thought the only one that was left was the Quaker Oats guy and Mr. Salty. But so anyway, thank you guys so much. Thank you for the well wishes. I am getting better. Again, last night was something different, I believe. So Sage and put salt on your windowsills. It is the season of the bad juju flying around. So make sure you put your mirror stuff up and your spiritual warfare prayers and everything else, or whatever you do. Put that white light around you and keep your candles burning. Your light grounders and your light bearers and your light workers. And this is a hard time for us, but it just makes us stronger. And it makes us something else that makes us stronger is when we reach out to each other and share that energy and that love. It makes us much stronger because we're standing together. And that's the most important thing. And that's one of the things that is going to unravel itself in this story. I'm so glad you're sitting with me. It's a Halloween tradition. Tomorrow night, if you can, do your bacon caramel popcorn or whatever your snack is. And Donnie and I will be here tomorrow night. I hope Donnie can be here tomorrow. If not, I will be here with you. Oh my gosh, I almost heard Mr. Dickens. He used to come in and tell me it was time to go to bed, and I could have sworn I just heard him. I love you all. Thank you for your love. Thank you for your kindness and your thoughts and everything else. And most of all, thank you for being here tonight through all these tech issues and everything else that's been happening for a couple of nights. We battled through it. We got her done, and I think we did Chicago some whatever you want to homage, I guess, but for a cursed land, and all the ghosts walking around in there. I just don't know. So there you go. Love you all. Have a good night. Be well until we meet tomorrow. And share this out. Like it if you can. If you haven't liked it on the way out, please do. It helps through the algorithms. And I thank you guys so much for being here. It's been my absolute pleasure to do this podcast for you, the videos and everything else. Thank you to everybody who super chatted. And of course, as always, being here, sharing, just giving it a thumbs up, commenting. It helps so much. And I appreciate you all. And we'll try to get all these little tech issues hammered out. Sorry about the jump scares. Ted, I love you. Everybody stay warm, whether you're under a weighted blanket, an electric blanket, a blanket of fur babies, or just a blanket of love. Please sleep sweet and safe tonight till we meet tomorrow. Good night. I love you. Happy Halloween.